Good evening and welcome to a special meeting of the Cupertino City Council prior to our regular meeting, which is at 6:45 p.m. It is now 5:30 p.m. Madam City Clerk, would you please conduct a roll call?
Councilmember Moore?
Here.
Councilmember Way?
Here.
Councilmember Willie?
Here.
Vice Mayor Chow?
Here.
Mayor Paul?
I'm here. Thank you very much, Madam City Clerk. And our first and only item on the agenda for the special meeting at 5:30 is a consideration of the council work plan for the upcoming fiscal year, which will start at the beginning of the month after next on July 1st. That'll go from July 1st, 2022 until June 30th, 2023. We've visited the work plan a few times now in council, and so Mr. City Manager Jim Troop, I understand that we do have a staff presentation, and I do commend the staff for putting together the work plan, particularly the Deputy City Manager, Katie Nomura, who's taken the laboring oar and I think done a really good job consolidating a lot of the information from our past meetings. It's a very ambitious work plan, albeit one that has proven some really good success in the last couple of years in putting forward particular projects. And so, Mr. City Manager, would you like to introduce the item or the presenter for this item?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yes, I'd like to present our Deputy City Manager, Katie Nomura. She'll be starting this off for us tonight on the work plan. So take it away, Katie.
Welcome, Katie.
Great. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council members. Can everyone see the presentation?
Yes, it's clear. Thanks so much.
And so on the work program, as you guys are aware, this is where you can review the draft work program that's been put together. And in the past, the council has had an opportunity to prioritize and rate items. And so you can see the listing of all prioritized items in attachment A. We've evaluated prioritization, cost, and staff bandwidth for these items. And we have a proposed city work program after those considerations in attachment B. This proposed work program does include the council's top 20 items and a total of 38 items. Again, I also wanted to mention that in attachment C, we have all items organized by department. We did this to help in case there are items that council wanted to elevate into the proposed work program that perhaps
recording in progress
of equivalent size would then be maybe traded out, but it would need to be in the same department to make sure the bandwidth constraints are still satisfied. And so here are all the items in the proposed work program. This is also in attachment B. Again, there's 38 items. You will note that some of these items skip numbers. We are using the reference numbers from attachment A, which include all of the items so that we can have one number to refer to each item in case that would facilitate council discussion. And so the recommendation is to adopt the fiscal year 2022-2023 city work program. And the next step in this kind of process is for budget adoption. Once the work program is adopted, those budget numbers will be included in the final for adoption by council. And thank you so much. This concludes my presentation.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Katie. Let's go to questions or comments from our members of the public here. And I'll just remind everyone, so we're going to go by order of hands on Zoom. If you are on your phone, please press *9 to raise your hand, I believe. Please correct me if I'm wrong, anyone on the dais. And we'll go by the first hand raised on the Zoom function. Everyone will be provided 3 minutes, and within the time of speaking for the first person with their hand raised, you'll need to either raise your hand on Zoom or get your blue card in. I don't see any members of the general public here in Community Hall right now, but in addition to the live participants, we can also have emails come in during the time that the first person is speaking. And if you email your comments to cityclerk, all one word, at cupertino.org during that time, up to 3 minutes of those comments over email will be read into the record by the city clerk at the end. So I do see 2 hands raised on Zoom. Those are from Louise Sadati and Deepa Mahendrakar. And so Louise, welcome. You'll have 3 minutes.
Mayor, may I interrupt really quickly?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, one moment, Louise.
So-
Yes, Madam City Clerk.
Ms. Sadati had sent me a video that I'm having trouble displaying. I've asked our video team to display it. So if I just sent it to them though, so if I could just ask if video has had time to cue that up before we.
Okay, sure. So Louise, just to repeat that, the City Clerk says that we're having some technical issues with displaying your video right now, and she has forwarded that video. I do notice that we have another hand raised from Deepa Mandraker. And so, Louise, if you would be okay with us going to Deepa first while we sort out the technical issue.
I'm totally fine with Deepa going first. However, she also has a video that she sent to the city clerk.
Oh, she does? Okay.
And I
So
am
we
able
need-
to. I am able to cue that.
And
one
the
up,
City
Mayor.
Clerk is able to play that video. And so let's go ahead and start with Deepa then. Thank you, Louise. And Deepa, I'll turn on your allow to talk function on Zoom, and we'll go ahead and make you the first speaker. Same goes as long as Deepa is giving her comments, please raise your hand or get your blue card in, or email cityclerk@cupertino.org to get your comments read into the record. Welcome, Deepa.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Awesome. So I actually had videos as well as photos. I'd love for some of those photos to be shared here as well while I'm speaking. Christian, thank you so much. I see the email and you could very well just scroll down that email to see the photos while the videos are coming on, if that's fine with you. Dear City Council members, sorry, what happened?
Sorry, I am having a little difficulty showing the video. Let's see. Can you
yeah.
can you see it now?
Yeah. I do have a few more photos, videos, photos, if we can. Yeah. Dear City Council members, thank you so much for working with us through this intense prioritization process and where we are with the DOLA prioritization right now. Dogs off leash area has been a passion of mine since 2017. I have been engaged with the City Council in one form or the other, as well as the Parks and Recreation. It's great to see such a grassroots movement having such an impact on the city's plans and to be one of the top priorities to be considered for next year. I am representing the Quinlan Knoll Dogs group, which is an area attached to the Memorial Park and is very well shaded with lots of redwood trees. If somebody can show the other pictures, you will get a chance to see the other dogs playing. The video was really short. It'd be great if, Kirsten, you can show the other pictures as well. If not, please send it to the City Council offline as well. There you can see it's very shaded, it's hilly, the dogs love it. If you scroll down, you'll see more pictures and more dogs, and we love it. It has a road on one side, which is not much used from driving perspective because it's just a dead end. It does worry us a little bit, but we are still fairly comfortable encouraging other dogs and keeping them under control and having a lot of fun over here. The dogs, little dogs, big dogs, all of them come here, have a lot of fun, get along well with each other. And I look forward to initiating the Quinlan Dogs Off Leash trial. We have over 40 members in our WhatsApp group, and we have over 25 dogs. Different dogs come at different times of the day, but what we are asking for is 2 hours in the evening, 1 hour before sunset to 1 hour after sunset, so it matches the seasonal timings. And I am truly appreciative of the City Council for having worked through this
15
prioritization
seconds.
with it. That's it. That's all I had. As you can see, we have all kinds of dogs, all sizes, coming and having fun over here. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you very much, Deepa. And our next speaker is Louise Sadati. Welcome back, Louise. And we also have Vasantha Naranjan on Zoom as well. Welcome, Louise.
So just a heads up, Vasanta also will have a video. So could you not turn on my timer until we're sure that my video is going to play?
Sure. It looks like the video is starting up here.
Okay, would you mind setting my timer back to 3 minutes?
Your timer's paused, and so it has
Okay,
been
great.
reset. Yep. Go ahead.
So if Kristen wouldn't mind starting the video. Thank you, City Council members, for this opportunity to speak. Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
You probably recognize me from previous meetings as Luis Sadati, the main DOLA leader. Tonight, however, I will be highlighting my role as the main leader for my dog group, organized for future Linda Vista for little dogs and delicate dogs. The video I just showed you and the previous videos I have shown you all were from our group organized for eventual Linda Vista Little and Delicate Dog Group. We have at Linda Vista group 99 members and growing for Linda Vista. The video at the beginning of the speech tonight is an example of our video collection. We have so far collected 57 days of 1-hour videos and pictures with corresponding counts of number of dogs, adults, and children. We have saved each video with date and data stamps as evidence for each data point. The data from these saved videos have been collected in a spreadsheet for Linda Vista Group. When DOLAs are under operational status in the future, we would be happy to share our data with the professional city staff. We are eager to work collaboratively and efficiently with the professional city staff to make more DOLAs an efficient and happy achievement for Cupertino. I do want to express how grateful I am to the 5 city council members for their high votes for more DOLAs. I especially want to give a shout out and a deep gratitude to the 2 city council members who gave us their 5-point votes. I want to end by saying sincerely, thank you, city council members, for your high votes for more DOLAs. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise. Our next speaker is Vasantha Naranjan. Welcome, Vasantha.
Hello, hi, this is Vasantha. So I had a video as well, if that can be displayed, please.
Just one second, let me cue that up.
And video, let's go ahead and reset that time once the video starts. Thank you.
Okay, having trouble locating it. Just one moment. Can you see it now?
It's,
yes.
Yeah, apparently on the Zoom function. Great.
Yes, thank you. That was the video. Hi, this is Vasantha, and thank you, City Council, for having me here for this opportunity to speak. And I want to thank each of the council members for their high votes enabling DOLAs to achieve a top priority. We're really grateful for that. As you can see, I'm from the Monte Vista Park in Cupertino, so I represent the group of dogs there. So I would like to say that we have a very vibrant, organized, and very well-behaved group of dogs at the Monte Vista Park. So we have a very organized play group, and we are really looking forward to be considered for a future trial for DOLA. So as you can see, the video represents our dogs dressed up. This was the Halloween dog party last October. So we were able to achieve this with a lot of coordination, and we can ensure that, we had a lot of fun with the adult members as well participating. So our group was very organized, with each of us taking a high level of responsibility to ensure that our dogs stay within the area, we clean up after the dogs, and are very encouraging and very welcoming to people who join us. So thank you, City Council, again for this high voting, as well as to be, I would request Monte Vista Park to be considered for the future trial of DOLA. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vasantha. And Madam City Clerk, are there any blue cards from members of the public, just to verify?
No, Mayor.
And were there any emails that came in for public comment to be
No.
read?
No, Mayor.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Madam City Clerk. And so we are back to council. First off, are there any questions of the presenter, of Katie or staff, with regard to the work plan presentation to start off? I don't see any questions or hands raised. I see one from Councilmember Moore.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Katie, for the presentation. I was wondering if you could reiterate the difference between attachment A and B so that it can perhaps help us. And if you have some idea of how this process is going to work, I'd like to hear that as well. Thank you.
If I may, Mayor, I can answer the question.
Oh, please. Yeah, please do. Thank you.
And so the difference between attachment A lists all items that were rated by council, so that you can see how each of them rated, and you can see how that all panned out based on how each council member rated each item. That is attachment A. Attachment B is the proposed city work program. So based on bandwidth constraints, other considerations, this is what we are proposing for the fiscal year 23 city work program. And so in terms of process, what I would imagine is, based on what is in attachment B, if there's any item that council really feels strongly should be in attachment B's list that is not, that be up for discussion, and then perhaps evaluating which item to maybe trade it out for, et cetera.
Yes, Councilmember Moore.
Okay, I do have one question regarding in item, or I should say attachment B, and it's the online visitor center. And my question about that is that I do see that we have a visitor portion of our website currently, where to stay, dine, and shop on the city website. There's a visitor page, blending convenience with fun, what to see and do, where to stay, shop, and dine, how to get around, weather, about Cupertino, and other resources. So I'm not sure that what this is going to accomplish with regards to spending more money on this particular item. It seems to me as though we already have it and that we need to update what we've already have online. And I was wondering what's different in your thinking, or from what council told you. What do you think is different about this item from what we already have on our website?
Great, I can answer that. And we were, this was an item that was added by and proposed by a council member, and it rated highly, or relatively highly, and so we wanted to see what we could do to address it. We thought we could do something more. This item would also include that kind of planning and evaluating what do we already have, how should we expand, and how does that look. For example, you could have an interactive map perhaps that kind of shows points of interest, places to go, and little blurbs about each one. There's a lot of different things we could do. I don't have the answer of what it will look like, because I think that would be the work that's conducted with this item. And whether or not you're right, whether or not the funding is spent is kind of dependent on which direction we go and how that works. It's also possible maybe all the potential funding may not be spent. It really depends on what that plan ends up looking like after we evaluate options.
So Katie, to reiterate, you or staff's recommendation is that the work plan have how many items again? Was it 20 or 22 or some other number, with the list going up to 38?
It's a total of 38 items.
Right.
What we were trying to say was we were able to get council's top 20 priorities into this 38. If that makes sense, before anything got dropped off due to bandwidth constraints or other considerations.
I'm not sure why our top 20 wouldn't be within the 38, but
they are in the 38. We were just trying to emphasize that they were successfully made it. So we had to evaluate bandwidth constraints per department based on who is working on each item. So there are gaps in which certain items don't make it because some departments.
Oh, I see. Okay. Got it. So I guess it would be the attachment, perhaps B, or maybe it's C, the proposed city work program. I note a gap between priority item 20 there's not an enumeration on my printout, but it says development accountability, which is priority number 20, which I assume was in a four-way tie at least. And then it goes to priority number 20. It's also priority number 20. And the next one, it says residential and mixed use residential design standards. But the reference jumps to 23. So I'm assuming by that you mean that reference numbers 21 and 22 dropped off the recommended list. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So, and that's based upon what you're describing here, because you checked in with staff and it looks like those were not able to make it in because of bandwidth recommendations or the like.
Correct.
Okay. So if I go back to that other file, I see reference number 21 was housing ownership strategies, and 22 was RENA-related general plan updates and rezoning. And they're both rated as a project size large. And so what happens to those items at this point if we take the staff recommendation? Do they just not make it on the list at all of the 38 work plan items?
That's correct. If they're not included, they are not part of the fiscal year 23 work program. I will note though, number 22 is actually another version of number 12, and number 12 is included. So we only included one of the two very nearly identical items.
Right. Well, and I noticed that the homeless jobs program gets on there, and I'm just kind of thinking about consolidation perhaps, but there did seem to be a bit of a kind of a dichotomy, if you will, in the viewpoints of council. But if you look at this proposed list, reference number 5, also priority 5, was the homeless jobs program. Reference 13, priority 11, was support for the unhoused. And I'm fairly certain that another item even got votes as well. It's near the end, I think. Housing programs for DN, that's not really the unhoused issue though. So maybe that did fall off based upon your formal rating. So if we were to combine two of these items, okay, so we're talking about item reference number 5, the homeless jobs program, together with the support for the unhoused, reference number 13, which are respectively priorities 5 and 11. And for 11, there was a tie. How would that affect your work on staff? I mean, I think it seemed that both of those priorities, because they're within the top 20, was understood within the staff recommendation as being feasible to work on in the upcoming fiscal year. Is that correct?
Can you state your question again, or in a different? I'm not 100%.
Yeah. So this is what I'm thinking. Okay, so we have two priority items in the top 20, and what I'm hearing is the top 20 is a manageable amount for staff. If we were to combine two of those and the priority somehow moved up, is that something that would affect the work from at least your perspective?
Okay. To answer the question, it would, whether or not they're combined in a list or not, they would still take the same amount of resources and work to do. So it's not going to really change a lot. I will say it is harder in a sense of reporting out. It's easier to report out and give better updates on particular projects if they're not all combined. But other than that, it's going to be the same amount of work, whether we combine them in a list or don't.
Okay, fair enough. And if there was some kind of example that perhaps combined something in the top 20 and something that wasn't in the top 20, but still in the staff's proposed work plan list, say between numbers 21 to 38, then I think we would have more of a question, right? Because 21 through 38 is stuff that made it onto the work plan, but isn't really understood as being necessarily feasible to get to, if you will, in this upcoming fiscal year. Is that,
Oh, no,
is that a
all
fair statement?
38, all 38 items in attachment B are being proposed for inclusion in the fiscal year 23 work program because staff believes we'll be able to make some good progress on them.
Okay.
So all 38, I'm sorry if I confused by adding the top 20 piece. I just wanted to emphasize that we were able to get all of those priorities in before anything got cut off. That was just a point I was trying to make, but all 38 that are in attachment B,
Right.
we intend to work on them in the next fiscal year.
Okay, great. And then I guess my final question, and I apologize to my colleagues, I'm going to take the liberty of being more specific in this one. I try to make my former questions more general as applicable to everyone's perspectives. And, speaking of that, I actually have one more. Katie, would it be useful to go through a tie-breaking exercise in your mind as pertains to these top 38? I know you and I had talked about it offline previously, and I am prepared to undertake that, but perhaps in the interest of time that, is not necessary. So what are your thoughts on that?
I don't necessarily think tie breaking at this point is really critical because we do feel like we will work on all 38 items. If it's something council desires, you can do so. I would say that at this point, I think for the most efficient use of time, really the critical piece is there anything missing from this list of 38 that council would like to be on the work program that isn't? And that would be pertinent for discussion.
Okay, fair enough. Well, let me take that liberty now for my individual item. Lawrence Mitty, I don't think we should be describing it as a master plan now. I think Lawrence Mitty is a park design right now. We had a really good comment from the public come in by email in the last couple of weeks, and that has to do with the name of the park. And so what I would request is that we rename this item to be Lawrence Mitty Park Delivery or something to that effect. I don't think we're at the master plan stage anymore. We've purchased the property, we've annexed the property. A consultant has been engaged and is starting to do the work on the outreach. So I just want to make sure that we're moving the goalposts forward as opposed to kind of prolonging the experience. I could see the prolonging of the experience prior to annexation, but now that annexation has been completed, there really are no obstacles with regard to this particular space. So that's just my comment. I see, Councilmember Moore, you do have your hand raised, but let me check in on the other council members at this point if anyone has any comments or questions. I don't see any takers on that, so Councilmember Moore, take it away.
Right, thank you. Katie, I was wondering if I could have some more clarification. I'm looking at attachment A at this point, reference number 13. And how it reads is that we are going to develop a specific plan for facility development with supportive services, which sounds like we are planning to build a homeless shelter, and we are going to be preparing a specific plan for that. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well,
I would defer to possibly the mayor if he wants to describe further what he envisioned with that item.
No, let me do that. Thank you. I appreciate that. I wrote this item, and yes, Councilmember Moore, you're referring to the second sentence of the project objective, which reads, a specific plan would be generated which includes considerations and recommendations for, and then the first ticked off category is facility development with supportive services. Yes, I do think that we need a facility for the unhoused with supportive services in our community. I think that done right, it can be much better than what we have right now, which is an unhoused issue that crops up with visibility on regular occasion, but it is certainly just there on a continual basis. So I think significant amounts of support needs to be going into not just financially supporting this, but delivering this in such a manner that it doesn't turn into something that people find undesirable in the community. So yeah, just to clarify on that, I think it's important, and the meaning behind that particular language. Yes, Councilman Moore.
Okay, thank you. So I'm wondering if this should be somehow connected with the ELI item, because we're looking essentially, if you are building a homeless shelter, you've identified some properties within the ELI item, and my concern with this one is that we don't have a property really identified yet. So I'm wondering what the vision is, and because we do have potentially the Outback property, or potentially the Simeon property, to have this facility built at, and I was wondering if maybe there's some connection between the two items. Otherwise,
as written, I don't see them, and I'll lean on Katie's comment prior to my question as to whether it makes sense to consolidate items that are on this 38 item list. I see these as being very distinct in their genesis. If you look at priority item number 1, I think that was very clearly ELI and BMR housing units for the developmentally disabled. And I think that is a distinct categorization from the unhoused. And I think that to consolidate them might be categorically a little bit conflated. So my preference would be to keep them distinct from each other so that we can. But I hear what you're saying. I mean, just in terms of the property, kind of relationship, right? I'd like to keep everything as open as possible, but the fact of the matter is, some of this has to do with property that really hasn't, kind of been put in front of the city. What I will say about the Outback Steakhouse site, however, is that the county has come in and it has talked about wanting to develop it with Measure A funding for BMR units. And I think the other property that you identify is part of the conversation, but I don't know how far into it it's gone such that we can get into really specific details. I don't think we can get into specific details, certainly with regard to any actions that the city can be taken, because there's nothing in front of the city with regard to that Simeon property. So Councilmember Moore, your hand is raised.
Yes, I do have some concern now thinking about the Simeon property, because I'm thinking about in terms of AB 686 and affirmatively furthering fair housing. We currently have 2,402 units, residential units at that same location, and 1,201 are affordable. So I'm concerned that if we were to actually identify some potential sites, that the Simeon property possibly could be problematic, and that we might, for reasons of equity, need to look at other locations throughout the city rather than condensing all of the housing at one location. And again, that's from AB 686. So I'm wondering if perhaps we want to edit this a little bit to talk about site selection and identification, especially since we're working on the housing element now. And there is something within the AB 686, I believe, that talks about providing shelters. So maybe the city attorney has read something about that and has some advice regarding the requirements that we need to meet for our housing element.
Well, let's put it this way. I mean, cards on the table. I understand that, shelter for the unhoused is not a politically popular thing to put anywhere, frankly. And I think as you get into more affluent areas, you're going to get more pushback. I mean, I'll put that on the table. I'll also put on the table, I'm 7 months out. I can be very clear about it and just say, I think we need to put in the facility. I'll be equally clear about the notion that I agree with what you're saying. All the density shouldn't be in one particular area of town. And the fact is, if you're talking about furthering fair housing, we shouldn't be looking at less density in some areas and more density just as a matter of course in others. So I would say let's have a full full geographically ranged conversation about where these facilities could go, how they'd be supported, and leave it at that. I mean, I don't know that it really would make sense at this point, since this has garnered some significant support. It may not have garnered particular support from any given individual council member, but looking over the kind of individual perspectives, I'm not going to turn this into a kind of a filibustering opportunity. I think we basically have some general understandings of what priorities are, and we can go forward with conversations. Like I say, halfway through this fiscal year, I'm out. So I mean, if other people don't feel that that's as high of a priority, then it probably gets a little bit lost in that conversation of the several agenda items. But I will say, on this item, if you look around, encampments on Wolf, encampments in Lawrence Mitty, encampments in various areas. There's a triangle in the Lawrence Mitty, not Lawrence Mitty, but Lawrence, 280 Stevens Creek, near Calvert, kind of confluence, if you will, that has a number of encampments, tents right now. So I mean, that's in San Jose, I think. I look at Measure A funding, and I think a lot of this money is going towards transit-oriented developments in various parts of the county, and it's not really going towards unhoused support, which is Councilmember Moore, part of what you talked about as the chair of the VTA Policy Advisory Committee last week. So I mean, it's something that I think it's stipulated that it's tough to bring in, but as a priority, I don't see why it hurts to put it on there for discussion purposes. Vice Mayor, you've had your hand raised very patiently, and you've been making noises, so let's yield the floor to you.
Thank you. So the support for the unhoused, if I were on the county supervisor board, this is what I would support. But as Cupertino, as a city, the state allocated and the county decided to allocate, I think, 34% of our property tax to the county to provide all these services, when the city only gets 7% of that property tax funding. And therefore the county provide a lot of supportive services. They have social workers to support. So to support homeless, it's a very complex problem that we don't have a single city staff who is in that area. Our only 2 case workers at senior center to serve seniors are removed. So we have 0 person on that. And in terms of any housing for shelter, this is all county. It's the county's responsibility. And so I'm confused. Why is that now under our jurisdiction even? I mean, of course, we should do everything to support the county in what they are doing and work with them. For example, the plan to end homeless. We should create our plan, but that's in support of the county plan as much as we can to address this important issue. So if there could be a homeless shelter or low-income housing and in a county property like Simeon property, we should support that, and that's already covered in the number 1 item in our list. So I'm a little confused. What exactly, how is this different from number 1? And are we doing something we totally are not, we don't have any expertise or any funding to do? And another thing I want to bring up is number, let me share my screen. So I understand that I was a little confused too. So the attachment B has 38 items. All of those are in the proposed work program if we adopt today. And attachment A has all the items that we ranked. And some of those made to the list, some of those not. And Katie says the top 20 made it to the list, but some items after 20 made it, some items didn't. So I think we should talk about what didn't. Number 21 is home ownership strategies, which I think is more important than homeless for a community like Cupertino. You want to stop people from getting into homeless. You want to provide middle-income housing. You want to allow people to be able to build wealth through home ownership. This is ranked number 21, but it's not included. And number 22 is also not included. It's RENA-related general plan updates and rezoning and housing element. I'm a little confused. This is housing element. So why is this not included? Then let's just go through that first. And then number 23 in the priorities. The first number is a priority order. Number 23 is included. That's residential mixed use. And then 24 is included. So 21, 22 wasn't. 23, 24 was included. And then I see 42 is a housing program for Dianza. But I did find the same item that is here. Sorry, it's a little confusing. This part is in the proposed, in attachment B in the proposed program. But, so this item isn't included, this I cannot see. So the one above, which include home share program and possible BMR middle income housing are not included. I'm guessing that might be a staffing issue. Just want some clarification on that. So that's actually partially included, right? And then we have the youth and teen social media engagement. I want to pitch for this item a little bit because this is proposed by the Teen Commission. It really shouldn't even be on the council work program because Teen Commission can just add this to their work program and implement it. It doesn't need our feedback. I know to us this are not important, but then to the teens this is important. So why don't we just allow them to add this to the Teen Commission agenda? And I hope that not adding this as proposed item would not prevent the Teen Commission from adding this to their own work program to work on engagement with youth and teen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor Chow.
I guess staff response.
Yes, I was about to ask for some responses to your comments. And so Katie or Jim or anyone from staff, would you care to, for my part, I thought the last comment was particularly interesting. I mean, if there was a suggestion from one of the commissions and it wouldn't necessarily make it on the city work program priority list, does that necessarily preclude the commission itself from taking it up as an item in what they do over the course of the year? That's a good question.
No, thank you, Mayor and Vice Mayor Chow. No, it is a good question. I'm just looking at the length of the list right now. It's very good, and it will take quite a bit of staff time to do that. So that's when I had staff go back and review and see what they can do. Mm-hmm. This might be something we can take as a side, a side item to review, and I haven't looked into detail on that because it wasn't part of the ones that we selected at that point. So I'd have to go back and take a look to see what kind of time that might take of staff to see if it is something we can fit in there. If it's something we can do, we could have it, I don't know what we'll call it, a little side item on there, but not having it be part of the 38, I think would help us at this point. Right.
Okay, I think that's a fair answer. And then as to the rest of Vice Mayor Chow's comments, and then I see a hand raised from Councilmember Wei. I'm going to call on staff to address some of the other things that Vice Mayor Chow was mentioning. So Jim, either you or Katie or anyone else from staff that heard some of the comments, and did you want to recap, Vice Mayor, very briefly to refresh recollections here?
So I guess first question is 21 housing ownership strategies. Why is that not included when lower, and 21, 22 are not included when the 23, 24, or yeah. So how were the decisions made on not including some higher priority numbers?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I'm actually going to either ask Katie, or if she knows, or talk to the department head themselves.
Right, and just in case it's helpful, the column that says justification considerations, we explained the reasons why something was not included. So that might be of help there. For 21.
I think, Katie, the justifications considerations are only existing for the ones that did make it on there, so.
Oh, no, they're in attachment A.
I guess in the first attachment you're talking about. So I'll note, just for the sake of helping along your answer.
And most of these are staffing resources is really why.
Right, yeah, so you've anticipated that, right? Lack of staffing resources for item 21 may require significant resources such as contracting consultant to perform an economic feasibility study. Other items with same priority number or items that should be completed since they are already underway or necessary to complete due to impact of the state laws and requirements. And then item 22, which is the one related to the RENA-related general plan items. This item is being removed because this work is included in reference number 12, which looks like, oh, and by the way, Katie, I think you've managed to create a pretty good nomenclature that's clear. Reference 12 is the RENA-related general plan updates and rezoning. Okay.
Then maybe you should not say not included there. You should say consolidated so that it's clear.
Okay.
Or if it's not included but a revised version is included, that should be indicated, like the Dianza program. Otherwise, it's confusing.
Okay, thanks, Vice Mayor Chan. In the interest of time, let me cede the floor over to Councilmember Way at this point for comments. Councilmember Way.
So thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Katie. I actually read the attachments, all three of them, real carefully, and I actually can see why 21 is not included. It's a large project, and there are 3 zeros on it. So I look at how not just the number 1.6, but how council members rate it. So if 3 council members put 0, and I see a lot of them are not making your list, maybe that's not how you see it, but that's how I see it. 22, I remember vividly, I think because Vice Mayor Chow added something to it. It's exactly the same as 11 or 12, but I didn't like what was added on the Heart of City, so we separate this. I remember this, we separate to 21, 22. So exactly, actually, that language is already in the other subject. So I am very pleased with this list. I think it encompasses a wide range of our priorities, and I think a lot of covered every council member's focus. So, and I am actually surprised that the staff chose 38, and I think it's a lot of staff time. So I want to thank the staff for being really gung-ho and pick up a lot of things. So I think we really gave this a lot of thoughts. This is the 5th time we met for city work plan.
I thought it was the 4th, but it could be the 5th.
Yeah, so, and then I think we really thought through, and last time we separate things, put things together. So personally, I'm very happy with this list, and I thank staff for picking the 30A and work on it for the next 21, 22, 23 years. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Councilmember Way. Councilmember Woolley, did you want to make any comments at this time before we bring it back to further round of comments? And in fact, Councilmember Woolley, once you get done speaking, I might ask for a motion to move forward on this item, given the time at this point. Councilmember Woolley.
Yeah, well, I'll echo Councilman Way that I'm pretty happy with what's on. I agree with the comments that have been made. The one question that I would ask. When we did this the last time, it was prior to the CIP, for which the CIP has the City Hall, I'll call it analysis. And so when I went through the work plan, and concern about the seismic upgrades that we originally looked at in 2019, and the sports center is now seismically upgraded. Great, but not City Hall. So I wanted to make sure that that wasn't going to somehow be forgotten. But with it being on the CIP, I think as Councilman Moore had previously said, sometimes it gets confusing what's on the work plan versus what's on the CIP. And so some things that I feel oversight is important and input is important, like Memorial Park, by putting it on the work plan allows us to get regular updates and give feedback / direction. But in something like the seismic upgrade, if I read the description here, examine seismic retrofits, upgrades, and remodels to existing City Hall. And so to me, that really does sound exactly like what we were ending with on the CIP City Hall line item. Staff brought us what their recommendation was, which was a 3-story parking garage and things that I think maybe are beyond, perhaps beyond what's truly needed. But this is essentially that, in my view, and from a city safety standpoint, I think by having it in the CIP versus the work plan, because the work plan has a lot of subjectivity to it, and we don't want subjectivity with safety. We definitely want to be sure that all our concerns are being addressed, but Memorial Park, with or without a DOLA, I mean, those are good reasons to have it in the work plan so that we can help to make sure that the community is getting what they'd really like to see. So I'm wondering whether or not 17 really belongs on this list. Well, why not just leave it and move forward? Because I'm concerned that city staff is overloaded with the work plan. And so trying to find places to economize on staff time and bring it back into something a little bit more manageable. I truly feel about 30, maybe 34 items from our history from the past 3 years. That's a pretty challenging list for city staff. And we have right now up to 46, but -2, so about 44 items. So I'm not sure if the city manager or Public Works wants to, give us some feedback on the importance of having the seismic retrofits in the city work plan.
Sure, Jim, take it away. Thanks, Councilmember Willie.
Okay, thank you, and I see Matt's on here too. Thank you, Mayor and Councilmember Willie. It's one of those things. If it's on the work plan, it focuses it more. If it's on CIP, so it's sort of a double shot. It's in 2 places. I do think at times it's confusing. Why is it in one and also in the other? I would not be opposed if we pulled it off this plan and just left it on the CIP, or vice versa. But it is a CIP item, so I think housing it better in CIP would be more conducive to it.
So just one other comment. So, when I look at it here, I see maybe it doesn't have much in the way of budget here. Because, no, 500,000 is in the budget. Yeah, that's comma 00, not a dot. So yeah, 500,000. When we had our CIP meeting, and I felt had somewhat of a direction, although we said to bring the CIP back to us for final, the last word that I had was, in order to get the city council the answers to all the questions we feel needed to be answered for our community, especially considering the huge amount of that type of project, $80 million, we need to truly understand before we move forward with, in the design phase. So I had said, my last word was, I would support, because you need money to make progress. And so I said I'd support something on the lines of like $500,000 for city staff to get us the answers to all of our questions, so that then we can make good direction in terms of how we're going to move, how cities should be moving forward with City Hall. Well, here's 500,000. I would definitely not like to double count 500,000 here and 500,000 in the CIP. I was fully intending to bring that $500,000 number again tonight during this CIP, and I would tend to think that's where the 500,000 belonged. But again, I'll leave it for your comments, and I'll stop.
No, I'm not opposed to having it in the one spot. I think comments in one of the previous meetings were just so it has more visibility, not just this one item, but other type CIP items. So I'm not opposed to it. I'm looking at our Director of Public Works, Matt. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, from my perspective, it can go either way. By leaving it in both places, as the city manager mentioned, it emphasizes it a little bit more. But in any case, this is an item that we know that there's additional work to be done, and we'd like to move forward with that work. The $500,000 level is a good starting point for us to do that, and to be able to bring some studies and some information back to the council to continue the progress. Certainly, this isn't a project that we expect to go out and through actions tonight and move forward and build something. It's going to need a lot of work and a lot of discussion with the council along the way.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Willie. Councilmember Moore and Vice Mayor Chow, do you guys mind if I just make some brief comments before going back to you? This dovetails off of Councilmember Willie's comments. I will say, I want to explain probably the most significant vote change I made in this round. That had to do with removing all support whatsoever from anything having to do with City Hall, and I moved it over to parking as recommended by the Library Commission. So if you look at attachment A, there's a 5-point vote for that, and there's another 1-point vote for that, and the staff allocation was $12,000. It was very minimal. It's basically signage with regard to encouraging people to park elsewhere to get the library. In return, I moved that 5 points from the City Hall project because I felt that it had not been handled properly, because we are in the middle of a fiscal year where $1 million should have been put into reconsidering and physically redoing some of the Civic Center parking in anticipation for the opening of the library expansion. And so I think precisely nothing has been put into that, even though we've had almost a full fiscal year now, and that expansion has now opened. And we also had fascial considerations off of City Hall that were supposed to be upgraded and renovated. And I see, I look at some of the beams there of wood that are in decay and should have been addressed during this time where basically nobody was in City Hall except perhaps myself and a couple of other people over the course of the last couple of years. So, this was a very deliberately considered transfer of votes. The seismic retrofits of City Hall did get nonetheless a lot of support. I would be willing to move all of that support towards this project in the work program as now described, but it needs to be understood that that is seismic retrofits. And because we wanted to make sure that there was a good working environment, additional monies needed to make that working environment within the context of that existing building. Now, to come back at us and basically say, hey, let's have a 3-story parking garage out here, give us $4 million, and that's why we're looking at it in advance for the next fiscal year, without vetting it at all to any of the council members, I'm not understanding where that, kind of fits within the process. So I want to make it really clear how my vote got changed. I'm very concerned right now with how that City Hall discussion is going. If we proceed with it in terms of the seismic retrofits, which I've always supported, and I don't appreciate the conversation changing in tenor and nature to saying, because you need to protect your employees, that's why you need to spend this 80, probably closer to 90 or even $100 million to make a brand new City Hall. I think it was always very clear that this council unanimously supported safe workplace environments. And if we need to have a conversation and we need to create a subcommittee of our council to investigate the assertions that are being made to us upon first impression prior to the end of this fiscal year and while we're considering the next fiscal year, these are being put fully baked on a platter with this false choice between safety and not safety, I think that we really need to come back to the drawing board and examine some of these assertions. I will also say that I coincidentally had the opportunity to meet the person who supervised virtually all of the upgrades to City Hall in 1986. And I learned that some seismic retrofitting was already done. That was yesterday over at the groundbreaking ceremony, which all of our council attended for the Canyon Crossing project. So I think that there is significant amounts of work that can be done from our council. And again, I would recommend a subcommittee working together with the city manager and the director of public works to try to investigate this in thorough detail. I think that it's extremely disconcerting to hear that seismic retrofits have gone from an estimate of $20 million to become somewhat comparable, somehow comparable to the price of a brand new City Hall, which was always priced out at least 60, if not 70 or more million dollars at this point. So Councilmember Moore and then Vice Mayor Chow. And then I will ask that we put a motion on the table so that we can consider it and hopefully vote on it before we start with our regular meeting. Councilmember Moore.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Paul, for mentioning City Hall. And with regards to the CIP items being on this list, so we have Lawrence Mitty, Memorial Park, the new City Hall Annex, Torrey Avenue, and a homeless shelter facility development. That should actually be a CIP item. And then seismic retrofits and upgrades to City Hall. I think that is all of the CIP items. No, one more. Blackberry Farm Golf Course Needs Assessment. So for me, because we have a separate CIP and it is part of our agenda, we need to prioritize these items in the CIP, and it has state law associated with it for these items. Government Code 65403 outlines what each one should have for information provided, and in our policy we have a 5-year CIP program which we are supposed to be approving. I personally don't support approving this work program with the CIP items on here. So for me to approve it, I would need to have the CIP items removed. We will be addressing them in on item 40, and at some point we're supposed to be prioritizing the CIP items. So just to let you know how I feel about this particular list as it stands. Thank you.
Okay, so Councilmember, are you saying that you don't think any CIP items should be on the work program? Now, if that's the case, then what do we do about the notion that in order to better support a CIP project, it helps that if it's on the work program? And I know that there's a flip side danger to this, right? There's the CIP itself, and then there are some items on the CIP that essentially don't get vetted by council. Is that kind of like the flip side consideration of what you're trying to get at here? Because the consideration that I have is if you take items off the work program, such as Lawrence Mitty, right? You know, there's no secret that I'm trying to usher through a park on the east side of Cupertino. I'm wondering, you know, does that leave me kind of out to dry, so to speak, with regard to pushing Lawrence Mitty, you know, park development interests in the upcoming fiscal year?
Not at all. So under the CIP, it would be discussing the description of the scope of work, total cost estimates, future operating and maintenance cost, and how the project will be funded. So we'll be looking at it in terms of what funding is available for that specific part of our budget. So we have the CIP portion of our budget. And this reminds me a little bit of when we were looking at field use and the order of items in that particular agenda, where here you would be approving these CIP items under the work plan, and then you're going to be looking at the CIP items separately, and there could be items which are on this list that perhaps wouldn't rank very highly on the CIP list, but you would be looking at them again in a different light. So you could actually have something show up in this list ranked differently from when you look at the CIP budget. So this, I think, definitely should have the CIPs taken care of separately. We look at the funding separately, and no, you wouldn't lose the ability to make sure that Lawrence Mitty was at the top of the list, because we're supposed to be prioritizing that group of projects separately. And I'd also like to perhaps hear from Matt Morley.
Hold on, before you start calling on other people, let me just follow up this very briefly. I agree, probably advocacy for a particular CIP project isn't necessarily affected if it's not on our work program, but what does it hurt to have it on our work program, I guess is my question. I mean, why would we not have something that's a significant capital? For example, if we didn't have the library expansion on our work program for the last couple of years, it would have been, I think, at the very least optically more difficult to go ahead and advocate for it and to push, making sure that we, gave some attention to it over the course of the last couple of years. So, I wonder what does it hurt to keep it on the work program, these CIP projects?
I just don't feel that they belong in the same category. One has state statutory requirements about the reporting, and the work plan. For instance, one of the things we looked at was changing the scope of and the naming of the Fine Arts Commission. Okay, I don't see how that project should be ranked against the library expansion, for instance, or now we have a homeless shelter a project being looked at. These are very expensive capital improvements versus things that could actually be policy changes. For instance, I'd like to see within the budget some policy implemented. It should having a few $1,000s worth of staff time to generate and implement policy does not rate up against a $40 million project. So I don't feel that they belong together. Other cities are not doing it this way, and I find it pretty confusing. But you're welcome to keep the CIPs in there if that's what you choose. But I also think that when you get to the CIP item later in the meeting, that you might find that you have already ranked your CIPs. The ones that are on this list, you've already ranked them. And then you're going to get to another list where you're going to see those items again. And actually, the homeless shelter, I don't believe, is on that CIP list. So you might not see everything that's here, and you will be ranking them already. So I think that ties your hands. When you go to the next list, I don't see how you're going to be essentially scrambling that list and changing it.
Well, I mean, there's no CIP for a homeless shelter at this point, right? I mean, it's purely conceptual at this time. So I'd be fairly surprised if it even went to the level of, introducing a discussion about some kind of a master plan. There's no budget that's put in for CIP for a homeless shelter under this work program.
Mayor Paul, I do agree with you. But it does say facility development with supportive services, and I don't feel that this $300,000 is coming anywhere near covering what it will actually end up costing. And for a CIP item, you need to show the description and scope of work, total cost estimate, future operating and maintenance costs, and how that project is going to be funded. And That's why this
Okay.
this
Okay.
item I think is
I have to
definitely
shut this down. I'm
CIP.
sorry. This is,
Okay.
yeah, we're running a little bit late. Vice Mayor Chow, unfortunately, we're just too close to 6:45 right now. And I'm not anticipating that you would have very brief comments, frankly.
So you want to continue this item?
I think we have no choice but to continue this item because I don't see that we would get your comments, a motion, a second discussion, and a vote in the next 4 minutes. So
But tonight, right? We will continue tonight.
yeah, we can talk about that. I mean, I had initially anticipated this being after our regular meeting started, so we can certainly allocate some of that time. So
Can I make a short comment? And I'll share the more detailed one later.
I'd rather not, thank you. Just give
okay.
people a couple minutes. But in terms of the time allocation, my hope is that we get to the primary items on our agenda by 8 o'clock. And initially, I had set that at 7:30 with an hour and a half for each of the items. That would include the work program, the capital improvement projects, and the budget. But I hadn't anticipated we would already have about an hour and 15 minutes for.
I would prefer
for
we
the
do
work
this
program.
first, though, before.
Yeah,
the
so
other
that's what I'm
items,
saying.
right?
Well, we have the work program, we have the capital improvement projects, and then we have the budget. Now, I think
Can I comment on the CIP items which you just discussed, so we don't lose that train of thought?
Okay, so let's go ahead and leave that to postponements and orders of the day when we get to our regular agenda. We are now at 6:41. We'll come back in 3 minutes and then some for our regular meeting of May 17th, 2022. And so we'll go ahead and continue this item to that regular meeting, and the precise placement will be determined under postponements and orders of the day. Thank you very much. Our special meeting is adjourned, and we'll see you in a few minutes.
You can get them with electronic ride suspension. I mean, it's just like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's like an automobile.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, welcome everyone to the regular meeting of the Cupertino City Council. Today is May 17th, 2022. If you could please join us to pledge allegiance to our nation's flag. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. And Madam City Clerk, could you please conduct the roll call?
Councilmember Moore.
Here.
Councilmember Way.
Here.
Councilmember Willie.
Here?
Vice Mayor Chow.
Here.
Mayor Paul.
And I'm here. Thank you very much, Madam City Clerk. The first item on our agenda tonight is consideration of a proclamation to the Silicon Valley Clean Energy Authority in recognition of its 5th year anniversary of operations for jurisdictions that include Cupertino and allow our residents to purchase completely clean, carbon neutral energy. And so I understand that we do have a member of Silicon Valley Clean Energy Authority staff. And so welcome. Please, if you'd like, join us on the dais and we'll present the proclamation to you. All right.
Would you want me to come up here?
Hello again. Good to see you. So I think we saw each other on Earth and Arbor Day at the celebration for SVCA. Would you like to say a few words for accepting the proclamation from the City of Cupertino commemorating your 5th year anniversary as an agency? Sure. All right.
I'm honored to be here on behalf of Silicon Valley Clean Energy. As you know, Girish Balachandran's on vacation this week, so he sent me in his place. He is proud to be a part of this community, proud to serve this community, along with all the other members of SVCE. Oh, and by the way, I'm Monica Padilla, Chief Operating Officer.
Okay, welcome. Thank you very much, Monica. And how about a round of applause from our, very good, for SVCA. Thank you very much. All right, so we'll go ahead and present this proclamation. And we'll get one with the proclamation open as well. congrats and keep up the great work. And for many more series of 5 years.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. And item number 2 on our agenda is a proclamation recognizing Public Works Week, which we recognize every year. We're very grateful to our hardworking members of our public works staff. It's wonderful that we have, through our city manager, hired a new public works director who is with us today through Zoom. And so our city manager, I believe, will be accepting the proclamation for Public Works Week on behalf of the city staff. And we'll go up in the dais to do that. Well, City Manager Troop, I don't think we need to wax poetical too long about all the great things that our Public Works Department does, but everything from our roads and our bikeways to our buildings to new parks and spaces for the community, those are all things that Public Works does. And I can attest, having gone in for some fairly early morning workouts in our city, that Public Works seems to work 24/7 in a lot of respects. So would you like to say a few words on behalf of the department?
Well, you said quite a few of them for me, but I agree with all of them. Actually, we have Matt, who should be on right now, so I was going to see if Matt wanted to give, since he's now the director, if you had any words to. Matt, are you there?
Of course.
I am here. Thank you very much. And thank you for the recognition. It's an amazing recognition, an amazing team that you have in place here in Cupertino. The theme this year for Public Works Week is ready and resilient, ready to serve the community, resilient in the face of adversity through our day-to-day work, as well as in crisis situations. So the team is there, they're ready. As you said, Mr. Mayor, they start early, they're out there first thing before light in the morning working, they're out there late at night working, they're called for emergencies and for urgent issues. They're building the projects, they're keeping the city running. So a great team all the way around, and I'm proud to be a part of it. Thank you very much for the acknowledgement.
Great. Wonderful. So we'll go ahead and recognize and provide that proclamation. And we'll take one with the proclamation. Okay, before we go to postponements and orders of the day, we have a request from Vice Mayor Chow for a question regarding item 2. Is that right?
Yeah, totally agree with everything the mayor said about the public work. But I'm curious on what this public work week, how that started. How come we didn't have a Parks and Rec week and planning department week?
Oh, we actually do.
Curious.
We recognize the Parks and Recreation Department or Recreation and Community Services Department. I believe it's in the month of July. It might be June. But Public Works Week actually, prior to the pandemic, had turned into quite a really great community event. And now that we have the attention of the Public Works Department as well as our new director, we can make note of the fact that the community had begun to become welcome to the Corporation Yard to visit various stations within the Corporation Yard. And I will say, Director Morley, your predecessors did a fantastic job making sure that everything got very organized within the corporation yard, and also opening up to the public over the course of time. So the first year they did it, I think it was pretty much limited to employees and council, and then subsequent year, possibly years, but not more than 2, it became a public event. So it would be wonderful to see that happen again.
It was
over the
a
course of time.
fun event. You get to see all kinds of vehicles.
Right.
And so is that a Cupertino thing? I thought that's like a national Public Work Week.
That's right. National Public Works Week is actually this week, and so
so it's not a Cupertino thing.
It's not.
So
specific
is there
to Cupertino.
then a national Parks and Rec Week?
I think that's a month, actually. The month of July is recognized as that. But if any staff from our Parks and Recreation Commission, or I'm sorry, the Recreation and Community Services Department is online, happy to recognize anybody who wants to raise their hand to speak. And I do see Joanne McGreeny, our Director of Recreation and Community Services, has turned on her Zoom video. Did you want to speak to that? Was it in July or June, Joanne?
It is July. You are correct.
Okay, great.
Mayor Paul,
So
we do have
yes.
one hand raised. I don't know if it's for this item or
From a
for
member of the
next
public, from Muni Madapatla. Okay, so let's go ahead and allow Mr. Madapatla to speak. And Muni, did you want to speak on item 2 or to speak to a future item? And okay, so Muni, I see that your hand is still raised.
That's for open communications.
Oral communication. Okay, very good. All right, so let's go on at this time to the next topic on our agenda, and that's postponements and orders of the day. I will note that a number of items on our agenda, and I'm going to go through them 3 through 35 are recommended for postponements to a future meeting. I will also say, and I think let me just say this at the outset of our meeting. I think it's actually a really good thing that we're having a particularly busy week right now, because we have a convergence of the work plan, the capital improvement program, as well as the budget. This should be the busiest week of our year because of the fact that this is the second half of May. We're doing administrative things in a timely manner, and we're converging those with upcoming work program points. So much like really successful events, I think you do 95% of everything that you do up to the day of, and then you wait for the chaos to ensue for that 5% that you just can't, plan out, and you inevitably have to, deal with on the day of. So that's basically our day of for the year at this point. So we do have a number of items that are recommended for postponement until our May 19th meeting. We did not want to notice a special meeting tomorrow for Thursday and not let the public know what we were considering essentially on this regular meeting. And that's why there are so many items on postponement for recommendation of postponement to Thursday of this week. So if you're following us here or at home, you'll recall at the end of our last regular meeting in April, we signposted this by saying we will have our first meeting in May, I should say, our first regular meeting in May. We signposted this by saying we will have a meeting on Thursday the 19th. So that's all been agendized. The one thing I would say is that I did have a request from staff to move the plastics item, which I believe is, let me see if I can find this, is not minutes.
It's item 19, Mayor.
Oh, just about to get to it backwards. Okay, so there was a recommendation to move item 19 instead of to May 19th to a date in August because of the anticipated various items that we'll be considering in the months of June and July. And so I would imagine that that's probably the second meeting in August, since we've already canceled the first meeting in August as part of our summer, or the only meeting we're canceling as part of our summer break. So I will entertain a motion to accept the postponements as recommended, with item 19 being moved to our regularly scheduled meeting in August at this time. And Councilmember Way, you have your hand raised. Would you like to make that motion?
So moved.
Okay, would anyone like to second Councilmember Way's motion? And Councilmember Willie?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on for items 3 through 35 for postponements as described. And so anyone have any comments or questions with regard to this? And I do see our member of public still has a hand raised, but he had expressly stated that that was for oral communications. Okay, seeing no comments or further questions, let's go ahead and vote with our lights.
Motion carries unanimously.
Very good. Thank you very much, Madam City Clerk. And so I think we can declare this meeting largely a success, even at this very early time of 7 o'clock. We are now on right after item 35 at oral communications. This portion of the meeting is reserved for any items that are not on our agenda. And so if you have any communications to the council in that regard, please raise your hand on Zoom or fill out a blue card. Right now, I see 3 hands raised on Zoom. They are Muni Matapatla, Jenny, and Connie Cunningham. And so please have your hand raised on Zoom before the first speaker is done. There are also 2 other ways to be heard in oral communications, as with any other item in our hybrid meetings. You can fill out a blue card if you're live, or you can email to cityclerk@cupertino.org. I do have a request from a member of the public to consolidate time onto a longer communication. And so whether that's oral communication or in a different communication during this meeting, I just want you to know that we're going to go ahead. I had instituted a mechanism for doing this a while back internally. In the interest of full disclosure, I don't specifically remember exactly when it was, but it was more than a year ago, I think at the beginning of my last mayoral term in 2021. And the general gist of it is, if you want to consolidate time, go ahead. We're going to put a cap on that at 9 minutes. And so for every person that you add to your consolidation, we'll give you 2 extra minutes. So if you've got 2 people consolidating, we'll give you 5 minutes. If you have 3 people consolidating, we'll give you 7. If you have 4, then we'll give you 9. And we encourage more people, of course, beyond that. But I think a 9-minute a 9-minute comment is fairly fulsome, given the context of our conversations and time limitations here. So that's how we're going to treat it, whether it be for oral communications or items on the agenda this evening. And so again, those items, those hands raised are Muni Matapatla, Jenny, Connie Cunningham, and now we have Eric Schaefer as well with a hand raised. And so Muni Matapatla, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to yield my time to my friend, Peggy Griffin.
Once again, the name?
Peggy Griffin.
Peggy Griffin, okay. So noted. Thank you very much, Mooney. And so, Madam City Clerk, please make note that Mooney is consolidating his time with Peggy Griffin. Is there a blue card for Peggy, Madam City Clerk?
Yes, Mayor. I placed them in front of you.
Okay. So procedurally, I'll go ahead and make Jenny our first speaker with regard to getting your hand raised or the blue card in. And so, yeah, thank you very much, Madam City Clerk. And so, Jenny, you are our first speaker. You'll have 3 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you. Boy, you guys caught me off guard. I dropped my tablet. Yes, thank you for the very interesting meeting tonight. Hi, I'm Jennifer Griffin, and I just wanted to, with the ongoing drama of the housing element, I won't go into that. I want people to remember that we still have these housing bills that are being churned out by politicians in Sacramento. And I'll briefly touch on 2. There is one, I didn't have time to look up the name, but this is by Laura Friedman, and this is eliminating parking standards, parking minimums for cars across the state. This is a rehash of her bill from last year. This one was reintroduced like the day after the previous one had been expired. And this is to eliminate, a city cannot require parking for new apartment complexes, et cetera. Totally irrational bill. Does not, some people need cars. Okay, that's all. I'll go on that one. The other one that is really is a mind-boggling is AB 2011, and I got the name correct. This is Buffy Wicks. I think it's all Scott Wiener's bill that will allow you to build housing ministerially with no CEQA investigation on any type of commercial property that means tech parks, commercial centers, strip malls, etc., office centers. This one, to me, is a complete, why are we doing this? Because as we all know, especially tech parks, there is potential for groundwater contamination, benzene, carbon tetrachloride in the groundwater, in the land. I do not believe that Scott Weiner or Buffy Wicks, either one of them, have a technical or tech background, so they do not understand groundwater contamination. You cannot put housing on some of these sites because how could you not have an environmental investigation? It is mind-boggling to me that these have even been allowed to proceed. I understand the trades are interested in them, yes, okay. But that means that if you build housing on a contaminated tech site, that means that everyone living there could be subject to massive health problems, the construction workers. And I just cannot believe that anyone, if the governor signs this bill, then he ought to be removed immediately from office. That's my take on it. And why they're pushing this, I have no idea. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. And so we'll go on. And before we go on to our next hands raised in Zoom, I just want to let everyone know that I do have 3 blue cards. They've been consolidated. That's between Peggy Griffin, Lisa Warren, and Govind. And I want to mention as well that Muni Matapatla had also added his name to this. And so there is that maximum of 9 minutes. If anyone wants to add to that, that's perfectly fine. It won't add the amount of time limited for this comment. And so our next speaker is Connie Cunningham. Welcome, Connie.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome, Connie.
Oh, thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council members, all the folks that are attending on Zoom and those that are attending there in City Hall itself. I wanted to speak to the housing element that we are working on in our city right now. On April 26, 2022, I attended the Planning Commission meeting on the housing element. Lists and maps of suggested sites were included in that long discussion that evening. I am particularly concerned with the possibility of displacement of people from their existing homes. The current inventory presented that night cited several possibility building sites that would result in mass displacement of existing renters. In some of those cases, it didn't even add density. There was even talk of culling sites from those that were on that list. Given the possibilities for displacement of many of those sites, I suggest that it is appropriate to keep the numbers of sites large. I urge that we look at sites that will not displace people. I ask that the report be revised to please tell us what the reasons were for including sites on the list and the map, because the ones that were recommended and the ones that weren't recommended were not consistent with them being included or not included. So the whole thing needs to be taken a look at before it comes to you at the City Council. I would like to recommend that the heart of the city is a better place to put homes because of the transit along Stevens Creek Boulevard, access to shopping, and education at sites around the city. And in those sites, you will not be displacing existing renters. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Connie. And we will go on to our blue cards at this time. And again, we have blue cards from Peggy Griffin, as well as Lisa Warren and Govind, and Muni's hand was ceded over to Peggy for her time. And so, Peggy, you'll have 9 minutes to provide your comments. Madam City Clerk, are there any further blue cards at this time for members of the public that are here live with us?
No, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. And Peggy is indicating that she'd like to use the overhead projector, and so video will go ahead and illuminate and activate that. So Peggy, you are visualized on the projector now. And so welcome, you'll have 9 minutes to speak.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. This presentation is intended to bring awareness for the need to inform and prepare the city and the Cupertino residents of the impact of the new Valco Rise project. Since significant changes in the details can't be easily understood, the city must provide the following: a 3D model of the entire Rise project to scale. It would include the surrounding properties to provide a true perspective. The residential properties on the west, Valco Parkway properties on the east, East Side Wolf properties, and hopefully Apple Campus 2 and other nearby businesses. It would help Cupertino residents to fully grasp the new project proposal. Marketing drawings just do not provide a true perspective. It could also be used as a marketing tool, both for the city and for the developer. A shadow study showing the impacts to these neighboring properties. People are considering solar. They need to know whether or not it's even going to be useful. No reduction of required fees. The impacts to our city are significant. An independent fiscal impact analysis to ensure the city is physically prepared for the changes that are coming. Some of the significant changes in the new RISE proposal are more office employees, over 750 more employees. That's 200 square feet per employee. This is about 15 more bus loads of employees daily. Greater sizes for residential units means more families. Significant surge in students on the east side. Additional resources to cater to increases in people count, need for more open space, more parks, and recreational facilities across the city. The buildings have increased in height and density. Parking is reduced. So where will new residents and office workers park their vehicles? The city must do a formal impact analysis. Some of the changes, the summary here is using usable square footage, which I will explain in the next slide. Over 500,000 square feet increase in total usable space. Total usable office space increased by 150,000 square feet. Residential unit space increased by almost 665,000 square feet. Previous employee counts are off due to this increase. Previous residential counts, adults and students, are off due to this increase. CUSD and FUHSD must redo their demographics. There are impacts to schools, possible boundaries. This is where I explain the total square footage that they uses double counting. And what that means is that when you have a room that's 10 feet wide by 10 feet long, that's typically 100 square feet. But if you have a ceiling that's 17 feet high, it's above 15 feet. So that square footage gets counted twice and becomes 200 square feet. If you remove, but the usable space is really still 100 square feet. Now, what's the difference is between 2018 and the RISE project was they took this, what I call airspace, and converted it to real space. They lowered the ceilings, so it's below 15, so you could add a whole new floor and still the total square footage would be 200. That's what they did. So what I've done in my numbers is I took out the double counting so I could compare floor space to floor space. Summary of tower and building changes. There are 7 towers. They're all now 239 feet plus. There were 5 lower towers, but they've been increased to the 239 feet. All 7 towers now are 70% wider in bulk. They will be less visible between the towers, and the majority of the building heights have increased 3 to 4 levels higher. This is just an example. It's not to scale, so you can't compare heights. I wanted to show you in the top row is the 2018 SB 35 plan. In the bottom row is the 2022 RISE. The tower widths you can see have increased in bulk and heights. This is on the east side. Again, on the west side, the top row in yellow is 2018, and the bottom row is 2022. Again, wider. Summary of retail changes. Increase of retail space by 8,832 feet, 33 feet. There's no retail on the east side of Wolf. What this means, there are 3 office buildings and 2 residential buildings. All the employees will need to cross the street to go to lunch. There's no coffee shop, no sandwich shop, there's nothing. To help all of us comprehend the true impacts of this project, please provide a 3D model of the entire RISE project to scale. A shadow study, so people know whether or not they should get solar. No reduction in required fees. An independent fiscal impact analysis. The city selected Valco as one of the sites for the RENA, the previous 2015-2022 RENA cycle, and made the corresponding general plan amendments. It is unclear if the housing units being developed under this proposal will be counted against the previous or the next upcoming RENA cycle. But either way, the city needs to prepare itself for this change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peggy. And Madam City Clerk, are there any further blue cards from members of the public? I believe that I asked you that, but
no, Mayor.
we'll check it again. That's right. So were there any emails that came in during the first speaker to cityclerk@cupertino.org asking to speak in oral communications?
No, Mayor, I see none.
Okay. Seeing none, then we'll go on. With the leave of council, I need to open up postponements and orders of the day again in order to continue our item and place the item from our special meeting at 5:30. So that was our work program. We continued it to this. And so can I have leave of council? I'll just go by voice leave. Is that okay, Councilmember Way, Councilmember Willie, and Councilmember Moore, Vice Mayor Chow? Okay, so we'll reopen postponements and orders of the day for the express purpose of placing the next item from our special meeting in the agenda. I propose that we place it after our upcoming set of items, and those are basically the updates from council and staff. I suggest that we place it before the study session on our capital improvements program. Would anyone like to make a motion to that effect? I don't see any take. Okay, Councilmember Woolley moves, and would anyone like to second that? Second. And Councilmember Way seconds. Any discussion on this? So that's continuation of the work program item to just before item number 40. Madam City Clerk, could you please take a roll call? Actually, you know what? Let's vote with our lights on this.
The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. The next items on our agenda are items 36 through 39. 36 is a set of brief reports on council member activities and brief announcements. And so we limit this to about a minute. And so one thing I will note for the benefit of our members of the public, we have added a report on subcommittee assignments. And so that's item 38. We've created a few subcommittees over the course of the last fiscal year. And so we'll go ahead and provide an opportunity for those subcommittees to report out briefly at the beginning of our meetings. And if there is a requirement or a request to have a longer subcommittee report or something agendized as something more in-depth than an update, then this would be the opportunity to request it for a future agenda. And so we're at item 36. Again, that's brief reports on council member activities and brief announcements. Please, within about a minute, would anyone like to give those updates since our last meeting on May 3rd of 2022? Councilmember Woolley, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. So, brief update. So, the Cities Association meeting conference in Sacramento, I found it to be very informative. I actually met councilmen and mayors from other cities and got to discuss with them some of the issues that we have, specifically the housing issues and the homeless issues. And the sessions that they had, I found very helpful. One of the ones I felt was very helpful was about a succession plan within the city staff so that they always have identified individuals that can move into a position when one unexpectedly occurs. There was the Mayor's Plastics meeting, and I'll leave that for him. And then the Canyon Crossing groundbreaking, which was Monday. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Willie. And Councilmember Willie, I saw your hand was raised next.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm going to skip the ones Councilman Willie already said. So on May 7th, I attended a Taste of History at De Anza College, hosted by the California History Center and the De Anza Foothill Foundation at the Youth Friend Museum. It's a wonderful Youth Friend Museum of Art, so I would recommend everybody go see it. And on the actually May 9th, Councilman Willie and I actually went to the Rise and to check out the changes and ask questions. That's just a session for question asking. And I also attended a brief budget overview with session with staff. Of course, the May 11th and 14th Cities Association City Leader Summit. I went with the Peninsula Division to see in person. We met a lot of legislators, Assembly Member Mark Berman, Assembly Member Evan Lowe, Assembly Member Kevin Mullen, Assembly Member Robert Rivas, and Senators Dave Cortese, Senator Josh Becker, and Senator Scott Winter. I think one of the topics we talked is about the surplus that the state's having. We're hoping that they will advocate to put it into infrastructures that would benefit everyone for the next 10 to 20 years. So all of them actually promised that they will work with the governor to do that. And Mayor's Cup, I'm going to leave to the mayor, and it's a really good event. And I do want to mention that I went and attended the annual Palestinian Cultural Day at the Santa Clara County Government Center, hosted by Supervisor Otto Lee. And I think it's really great that we, celebrate all cultures. And I also went to the Orion Abacus Association's Mental Arithmetic and Abacus Assessment Test. And I went there every year since their inception. It's really a very a touching moment for the parents and students to receive awards for their hard work and its resilience and that mental math ability for them to bring it forward into the future. I think that's very important. It's the skills that learn. It's not what they learn in mental math or arithmetic. It's that resistance and that resilience, that persistence, I think will help them in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Way. And would anyone like to go next? Councilmember Moore.
Okay, so I'm here to make an announcement that next Monday, May 23rd, from 6:30 to 8 p.m. here in Community Hall, we will have a community meeting on the Cupertino housing element. It'll explore what affordable housing is, what it looks like, and how to improve the community for everyone to ensure an inclusive, diverse, affordable, and thriving environment. And here is the agenda. You'll have the welcoming, a presentation on the housing element and affirmatively furthering fair housing, breakout rooms, a panel with 4 to 5 panelists representing neurodivergence and developmental disabilities, homelessness and affordable housing, veterans and racial discrimination, and then we'll have time for questions and how to stay involved moving forward. So I want to make sure everyone's aware that that's coming up. And I think we might have the CEP subcommittee make a presentation under their subcommittee in a moment. But thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Moore. That's very interesting. So, Vice Mayor Chow, I know that you've been under the weather for a good portion of the last couple of weeks. Did you want to forego your updates at this point? Okay, Vice Mayor Chow.
Yeah, apologize that I am feeling really tired. On the 4th of May, I attended San Francisco Asian Heritage Month event. It was amazing display of all kinds of culture, and they have a culture procession where every group wear their ethnic clothes and go on the stage. It's so colorful and amazing. And on the 9th, we had a 2x2 meeting with USD. We talked about the work audit items that the city will likely complete by the 3-year plan by this summer. But there are a lot of items that's under CUSD's responsibility, but there has been no update. So we have recommended to get more status update on that. I don't remember other items. And then yesterday I attended the Canyon Crossing groundbreaking also. I talked with, so it's amazing that they were able to put underground parking with retail in such a site without compromising the quality. That's, I think, a model we should follow. And I also visited the vocal rights that heard their explanation. So right now, there is no 30-acre roof park. There are pieces of landscape, the roof, and they will be only for private use. And there's only like 3 to 4 acres of park, but it's really a slope, the area that goes from ground to 10 stories within a short ride. So I don't know what's the slope on that. And so that's the kind of rooftop park they do offer right now. But it was good that they were gracious to give us a chance to look at their plan and explain that. Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I'll report out on 3 things. On the 7th, I believe that was Saturday, the Taiwanese American Cultural Festival was held up in San Francisco. And I think probably unsurprisingly, a lot of the participants from that were actually from the South Bay, here in Cupertino, in fact. But they had it at the Union Square Center Plaza area up in San Francisco. This is a very nice event. The second item I'll report out on is the League of California Cities meeting. I thought it was amazing. It was a great recommendation from our city manager, Jim Troop. I'm really glad that all of our council members signed up for it. I'm sorry, Vice Mayor Trower, that you're under the weather. But the nice thing about it is that there were parallel sessions for the days, for the 2 days of the conference, and each of those sessions were covered by our council. I made sure that that happened. So we had really valuable discussions and panels there. The very last panel that I attended actually had a developer there talking about the various things happening throughout the state. And I will say, I got up and made a comment about SB 35 and whether it is appropriate for housing laws to go ahead and be invoked and actually exacerbate significant parts of the housing crisis, such that you are looking at a project that could in our case, under a ministerial review process, deliver what is a significant amount of housing, but also create much more pressures on housing, thus create a net deleterious impact on that, which it's purporting to help alleviate. So I think we basically have an agreement right now throughout that it's good to have direct conversation. That was essentially the communication I got back from that comment, which is have direct communications. And the nice thing about what we're doing this year vis-a-vis this particular project is that we are having direct communications. As a couple of my colleagues alluded to, we're having sit downs with the applicant. And I think for my part, just want to make sure that we're not attacking each other by proxy. I think we're very clear on the record from or at least I think we're pretty consistent that there are impacts and we certainly need to address them, but let's keep those channels of communication open. But that was just one aspect of what was really valuable about going out and talking to our peer cities throughout California about various experiences. And then the final thing I'll report on that was also alluded to by a couple of other council members was the Mayor's Cup Plastics and Sustainability event that took place on Saturday over the new library expansion space. I just want to say stay tuned. It was a really excellent event. we had a number of people. We had some 80 some odd people actually show up. We were booked out on sign-ins, but of course, with attrition, the fact that it was free, the fact that we do have escalated rates of COVID throughout, we did end up, in the 80 to 90 range, which is actually quite significant. My take-home message from that is stay tuned. I think most of the benefit is going to be in the follow-up. We'll update the website. We'll get the video of the event out there. And I think that it was just, a really great effort by all involved, including our video staff, our sustainability staff, city manager's office, and, various volunteers and speakers that came in to talk about various aspects of the plastics issue. So thanks a lot for council's support on that. We allocated very significant amounts of funding to make sure that this program went off without a hitch, and it certainly did so. And so that's very, very much appreciated. So at this time, we are on to the next item on our agenda. I believe that is item number 37. That's our report on committee assignments. Those are the committee assignments that are assigned and approved by council at the end of each calendar year. And so would anyone like to start on the committee assignments? I see a hand from Vice Mayor Chow.
I missed it. The COSD 2x2 meeting is a committee assignment. So besides the walk audit items, COSD is also doing a survey for a new parcel tax and the bond major, because their current bond major is up. They have renovated every building. Now they need to prepare bond for the next facility improvement so that's coming up. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Vice Mayor Chow. Would anyone like to go next on committee assignments? I don't see hands raised. Okay, subcommittees is after this, actually, Councilmember Moore. So, Councilmember Willie.
Yeah, so on the 11th was our monthly Silicon Valley Clean Energy meeting. I'm always very anxious to hear about potential new project and providers to increase the amount of renewable energy. And at the current time, the one that's being proposed and that we agreed with is that PG&E is also now looking to get renewable energy in their portfolio, and they're actually now offering that to Silicon Valley Clean Energy along with the other suppliers that are out there. So we are continuing to move that bar down the road in terms of getting more and more renewable energy, getting away from the fossil fuels. The other noteworthy thing is they've put $12 million into a fund for EV chargers, and the target would be 1,100 EV chargers within the Silicon Valley Clean Energy territory. So it's beyond just Cupertino. But I think with that, we can all start to feel good that there are going to be EV chargers if we were to be switching over to an electric car. And that's going to be my focus in the next year, is to start replacing my cars with EV cars. So leave it with that.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Willie. Next, we have Councilmember Wei.
Thank you, Mayor Paul. Very briefly, I also attended the strategic partner meeting with COSD with Vice Mayor Chow. I was a little late because coming from another meeting, but I did catch up on the Safe Route to School reports and the strategic future collaborations on traffic around schools, especially after school consolidation, the walk by school planning. So I think a future activity collaboration with COSD will be concentrated on traffic will be very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Wei. And anybody, Councilmember Moore, next on committee assignments.
Thank you. So on last Thursday, the 12th, while in Sacramento, from the hotel room, I chaired the VTA PAC meeting, and we were visited by Assemblymember Berman, who spoke about AB 2181, which would change the makeup of the VTA board. And I did state that I am opposed to AB 2181, and I was opposed to AB 1091 as well. And we finally did get to discuss the TOD item, and we added a couple of additions to the prioritization list, which will go to the board, which Mayor Paul sits on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Moore. Vice Mayor Chow, did you want to Actually, you already provided your updates. Okay, so that was actually a really good lead-in into my committee assignment report out, and that's on the VTA board. Thank you very much, Councilmember Moore, for that. So the VTA board meeting actually takes place before the Policy Advisory Committee meeting. It's just one of those remnants of the fact that there are many committees on VTA, and unfortunately, they're not able to time every single one of them such that they happen right before the board meeting. And so the PAC meeting, I'm expecting to hear more about the policy for Measure A funding and hopefully support, as we alluded to earlier this evening, for unhoused facilities. But with regard to VTA, I would say the most significant thing, and certainly the thing that was getting the most press in this last cycle since May 3rd, was the funding for the downtown BART extension to San Jose. And so that's not an insignificant amount of money. We're talking something on the order of 10 figures right now, so that's in the billions. It will probably, I don't want to jinx anything, but it'll probably break into the 11 figures when all is said and done. Right now, it's in the nines, supposedly, under the FTA's, the Federal Transportation Administration's estimate, which added a couple of $1 billion onto it since the VTA's last estimate. But what they were saying from our agency is that because the federal government is considering grants of up to 25%, a higher estimate number actually doesn't work against us with regard to getting that federal support. I guess the nutshell encapsulation is that significant numbers of approvals were made to move this forward from the VTA perspective, while at the same time, one of the measures that was supported was to go ahead and look into the possibility of reexamining the general engineering single bore versus double bore kind of approach to this through a separate mechanism. But as of right now, functionally, we're looking at single bore, large hole, with the hole being a bit deeper to avoid some of the top level on the ground types of disruptive considerations. So that will be my report out from May 3rd until May 17th. And so we are now on to our new item, that is item number 38. That's our report on subcommittee assignments. Would anyone like to provide subcommittee assignment updates? I do see a hand raised from Councilmember Moore.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Paul. So I'd like to report on two of the subcommittees that I'm on, and just as a reminder, I'm on the monthly treasurer's report with Mayor Paul, the grant program with Vice Mayor Chow, Stockelmeyer, Snyder Hammond Historical Society with Councilmember Way, and previously had discussed contracts with Councilmember Willie. Last week, Mayor Paul and myself, as city manager, Jim Troop, and our finance director and treasurer, Christina Alfaro, met to discuss the budget format for our monthly treasurer's report. And in that, we have some negotiating going on about what can be in the monthly report, but so far we would suggest that we have a cover resolution with signatures from the treasurer and whomever else is necessary. And we would reference both the state and local code requiring the monthly statement, have a simple table indicating the money movement, and we would have fund balances shared for parkland dedication, et cetera, and account statements for each account, which would include the main checking and two other checking accounts, the 115 OPEB LAIF accounts, and any others that we need to be reporting on. The treasurer would like to share a special items, potentially to have a highlight item. For instance, the money that came in for park improvements could be discussed and highlighted each month to share something special with the public. And then the other subcommittee I'd like to report on is with regards to the CEP, and we have met 4 times now for about 2 hours each, and the CEP is the Community Engagement Plan Strategic Advisory Committee, which consists of myself, Vice Mayor Chow, the Planning Commission Chair Scharf, and the Housing Commission Chair Tessa Parrish. And we've met with our consultant, EMC, And our last meeting also included a sub-consultant from West Valley Community Services. So that is Andy Flower from EMC and Kylie Clark from West Valley Community Services. So we've been discussing the community engagement plan necessary for our housing element process. And as I stated earlier, we've been working out and discussing the agenda that we would be having, that EMC will be having for their meeting on Monday. So that's Monday, May 23rd. I'm going to make another plug for it, May 23rd from 6:30 to 8 p.m. here in Community Hall. Right. And I'd like to make the other subcommittee reports at another time. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Councilmember Moore. Did anyone else have subcommittee report updates? Vice Mayor Chow.
Yeah, for the housing element community subcommittee, I'd like to add that the current plan is to have 3 community meetings. So May 23rd is the first one. There will be 2 more, but then there is no plan for any focus group meeting on specific groups to outreach to. And we are told that there is no budget in the current contract. But then when I see other cities' housing element, they have a long list of focus groups that they did reach out to. Since we don't have budget, so I am suggesting that we conduct a survey, a written survey that different organizations can respond with written comments. Then we can include those in housing element. That's cost efficient. And we also recommend, and this one I didn't mention at the meeting. This is
Excuse me, Vice Mayor.
Yeah.
I'm afraid this item is not agendized for discussion this evening.
Okay, yeah. And what we did comment on is for the 2 remaining community meetings, it's better that we have different partners work with the schools and to be held in different geographical location. But we are unsure whether these comments would be received by staff or not, because we found the experience has been we make comments, but we don't really know what the staff will implement or not. Thank you.
Okay, let's go on to our city manager update if we don't have any other further subcommittee updates at this time. And City Manager Jim Troop, please take item 39.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So we haven't done this for a couple meetings now, but we are seeing an uptick in COVID cases. So just a quick snapshot of where we were. It says the Bay Area now has the highest in California COVID infection rates. The current wave is fueled highly by the contagious Omicron variant. Bay Area communities are seeing increases in reported cases, levels of virus, and the sewer sheds, as we say, and hospitalizations. Actual case rates are likely higher than those reported because of widespread use of home testing. So I've been following this almost on a daily basis. It's on my homepage, and it's slowly gone from 142 to 250 to 3 to 4. So today was 772 cases on a rolling average.
Wow.
Hospitalization rates have started to also rise locally and statewide. However, Cupertino, the good spot, we continue to have the lowest case rate per 100,000 in the residents in the county, so we're still doing our job. Testing is still being available. Testing on May 16th here in Cupertino Senior Center resulted in another 150 tests administered. 12 Citizen Corps volunteers staffed and supplemented the clinical services. Testing will return Monday, the June 6th, at Creekside Park from 9:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. and you can schedule appointments at www.sccfreetest.org. And the other one, the federal government has just opened up a 3rd round of the free tests be mailed to your home. If you go to the website, it's under the special.usps.com/testkit site. You can log in and get some more sites. And also, if you would like to apply to be the City of Cupertino's next Poet Laureate, the City of Cupertino has begun the recruitment to select the 23-25 Poet Laureate. This position is an honorary post sponsored by the City of Cupertino and seated in the Cupertino Library. The Poet Laureate's poems will be featured in events programs and publications with the goal of raising awareness, interest, and participation in poetry, literature, and language among Cupertino residents. Applications are available at cupertino.org/poet laureate or at the Quinlan Community Center. Applications will be accepted until Wednesday, June 1st at 5 p.m. For questions or additional information, please email poetlaureate@cupertino.org. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. City Manager. And so we'll go on to our next item on the agenda based upon our continuation from the special meeting and our postponements and orders of the day. We are going to be continuing right now. This is approximately 7:45, our work plan item from our study session. So just to give everyone an orientation of where we are in the evening, we have 3 items remaining. There's the work plan, there's the following item, item number 40, which is going to be our capital improvements program, and then finally the budget, our first look publicly at the budget on item number 41. So with a little bit over 4 hours left, I'm going to go ahead and try to allocate roughly until 8:15 for this item, and then that will leave us a little bit over 3.5 hours for the remainder of the items. We'll take a brief break after we finish off the work plan. So if you're keeping track of time, around 8:20 we'll start up, according to how I'm trying to allocate the time with the CIP. That's item 40, and then roughly around 10:10, I'd like to conclude that. Take another break around 10:15. We'll start with the budget, and then we'll conclude with the budget by midnight, our time to finish our regular meetings. Now, with regard to the rest of the agenda, that's been continued until Thursday. You'll see the notice going out for that sometime tomorrow, and that will be a virtual meeting. Given the city manager's update and the rest of what's been happening, we're keeping a very close eye on what's safe and advisable. I will note that, very consistent, I think, with the practice of our community, there are actually no members of the public here live right now, and there haven't been from the very beginning of the meeting, which is not surprising, which, actually I think, I take that back. There have been a few members of the public here at the very beginning of the meeting, but we don't have any right now. And so we'll be visiting the advisability of continued, notice hybrid meetings, I think, depending upon the rates. But as for Thursday, that will be a virtual meeting. So right now, again, we're back to the work program continued. I believe we left that off with Vice Mayor Chow, and Vice Mayor Chow wanted to make some comments when we, concluded that to adjourn and continue to this point in time. So Vice Mayor Chow, would you like to start us off with your comments on the work program at this time?
Yeah, thank you. I have a few comments, and then I have a motion to make. But first, I have a question about the visitor center. I think before this meeting, I didn't read the items in detail because I did not expect there will be significant modifications to the description, even the scope of this work that we have ranked after 3 meetings. And so I was expecting we would just come and receive a priority order, but I am surprised to find out some of the items, even I proposed that the scope is totally changed. One of them is the youth who work. The original intent is to provide incentives so that high schoolers could be hired, or college students could be hired with a discount, with some supplement. But this has been turned into a new item that will work with a partner organization to create a 6-week summer fully paid internship position for 10 youth. My original intent was not for this to be a summer intern. It should be a year-round position, because it's very valuable for youth to get this kind of work experience during the year, not just summer. So this is totally a different program. And now I'm surprised to find out this is included, but it's a totally different item. And this is after we ranked and discussed for a long time. And last time I fought so hard to modify the item when people didn't even want to modify it. But then now we see so much modification. And another one is the visitor center. I think the current description says that we will have an online visitor center, but then the idea of having digital maps so people can identify interesting locations for photo ops to post on social media is crossed out. I think this one is very important in this because that's what will bring traffic to Cupertino. If people start posting interesting locations in Cupertino and to visit. So that's essential, I think, for the item. Regarding the comment about CIP, I think it's good that some of the when we put CIP items on the work program, it does get that visibility, and we get the quarterly report. So I am okay with that, but then the same CIP item should also appear on the CIP list, so the CIP list is complete. So there is some duplication, that is fine. I propose that after we adopt the work program, let's rank it again. The reason is some of the items ranked 5 by some council member got dropped off. So this ranking is different now. The ranking after it's adopted is important because staff then is clear on the priority when there are resource challenges. And also if we are putting focus on top 10 items, then those are the top 10 items of the adopted program. Okay, so now for the motion. One more thing I'd like to, so for the motion, I'd like to motion to adopt the proposed fiscal year 2022-20. Should I do the motion now?
Go ahead.
Okay. 2022-2023 city program in attachment B with the following edits. For the youth who work program, I'd like to revert that back to the original description. And for the city store program, the online city store program, I'd like to see that reverted to the original description too. And then the third edit is for support for the unhoused item. And as I mentioned, so maybe make that my motion first. For the support for unhoused, I'll make that amendment to the original motion because I'm not sure if I get support for that. Or should I propose that together?
Well, okay. Why don't you make that your motion at the outset? So the youth who work at item, you want it reverted back to the original description, and by that I take it you mean the description that we had before tonight's item. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Where I'm just suggesting to provide maybe a $2 offset to offset the cost.
Okay.
Whether that's reasonable, I don't know. This is just a suggestion. And the Economic Development Committee and the manager can work out a better plan. But this is more like a grant. We don't need an external partner to administer it because then that would add administer cost. And then someone would need to work with the youth. So this will simply be a grant and then maybe a public campaign to encourage people to get this grant.
Okay,
So
and then
I
your
think it's
city
a smaller
store.
scale.
Okay, fine. So the city store, you want, when you say back to the original description, that's the same issue, right? You want it back to the description that we
the-
had in the prior iteration.
Yeah, so that would be the description in attachment A, where, oh, I mean, it's okay with offline visitor center, I guess.
I'm sorry?
We can, the original description says develop an online and offline visitor center. I'm okay with crossing out offline visitor center.
Okay, I think
So
you're-
that
you're-
visitors know where to go. But in the original description, the next sentence was crossed out, which says ideally a digital map. Are you seeing my screen? You're not seeing
No,
my
we're
screen.
seeing your Word
Yeah.
file. We're not seeing the file that you're looking at.
Okay. So this is attachment A for visitor center. So the second sentence is crossed out, which says ideally a digital map to identify locations to visit or for photo ops to post on social media. I think this is essential for the success of online visitor center. I'm okay with crossing out the offline part. So I guess I should. make
Okay,
that-
you've clarified what you mean by your motion on those two items. Is there a second for Vice Mayor Chow's motion?
I'll second.
So Councilmember Woolley seconds. With regard to the item, I'd like to ask for a friendly amendment. It looks like under justification and considerations on reference number 10, which is priority item 8, which I think is probably a tie for number 8.
What's the
There's
item?
it's student internship program.
Oh.
It looks like under justifications and considerations, there's an added sentence that states assumes the internships would be paid and targeted for high school students. I did not write that in my considerations or the project objective initially. And so I am not assuming that these internships would be paid. I think it actually speaks to one of the comments that you made for the youth who work item. So I'm not assuming a paid internship here. So if other council members want to support that, based upon what was set forth, my recollection of what I had written up was not something that, and when students approach me, I'm not sure what the experiences of other council members have been. They seem to just want to essentially volunteer as an intern over the course of the summer. So just to speak to that, I want to make it very clear that that is not an accurate assumption as far as the person who wrote the item is concerned. So would you take that as a friendly amendment to remove that assumption, Vice Mayor Chow?
Where is that? I cannot find the sentence.
So that's in attachment A or attachment B, perhaps?
Yeah, I cannot find paid under that item.
Yeah,
So if,
okay,
and-
so attachment A, if you look at reference number 10, under justification considerations, before
under here.
before it states proposing council members' notes, there is a sentence that's been added that states, quote, assumes the internships would be paid and targeted for high school students. The part about high school students is fine, because it seems like the inquiries that we get are by and large from high school students. But the assumption that it's paid is not something that I was thinking that would be part of the program. So
yeah. So strike that.
yes, strike the assumption that these are paid internships.
Just
So,
strike the sentence.
as far as I'm concerned,
Do you
can
want
strike
it
the
to
entire-
target for higher high school? Because I think we should consider college students too.
I would very much be
So-
open to college students for, but
So
my
maybe just
understanding
strike
in
the whole-
college, people are perhaps looking a little bit more towards the paid internship process. But I certainly wouldn't turn away a college student, and have not in the past when a request for an internship was set forth. I did have an intern in 2018 during the summer, and that was a college student who was on,
Yeah.
of course, summer break. But I didn't have an intern last year for, I think, pretty obvious reasons. We're mid-pandemic. But this year, as it's looking right now in terms of our collective rankings, it looks like we probably do want to have the ability to take on interns as subcommittee members to report back out at the end of the summer. I'm getting a confused look from Councilmember Moore. Did you want to say something, or what's the situation here?
Yes, Mayor Paul, this item looks as though the interns would be working for different city departments. So the internships will be project focused, with participating city departments asked to identify a specific project or projects that the student intern can undertake. So it looks like they would be working for various departments in the city during a pandemic, and then staff who may or may not be working on site would, I'm going to assume, would need to have to be at City Hall or some other location in order to train these interns, I'm going to assume. So I'd actually like to hear more from staff how they feel about this particular item. Thank you.
Okay. Well, let me before we go over to staff. I think that I should clarify what the process was contemplated originally, and yes, staff did along the way kind of take in other cities' programs and try to suggest those as templates. What I had envisioned if we pass this going forward is that we have a subcommittee going forward this summer for anybody who would like to be on it. We would share we would share our experiences with the idea in mind that we're looking to implement a summer program in the summer of calendar year 2023. So in this upcoming summer 2022, I actually already have 4 or 5 pending requests for internships. I do have some thoughts as to how to situate people to work on particular projects, but I don't have an expectation in this upcoming summer that staff would be involved in identifying projects that potential interns could work on. My thinking is that if we gave an 8 or 9 month lead time, we could come up with a list of projects in coordination with staff after about the August or perhaps September timeframe, once the subcommittee reported out on these experiences with the interns, with an eye on looking at how we could potentially have a program. So as described by staff within the rest of the justifications and considerations and objectives that they've added, I generally don't see an issue with the idea of having a coordinator, with having an orientation, with having an exit, kind of interview process. I think those are positive things. But in terms of placement and in particular departments, and as you know, we are still mid-pandemic because obviously this hasn't ended yet. I'm not looking at this as something that we're going to implement right away in this upcoming summer. I want to take it stepwise. And of course, if it turns out to be, hazardous, with regard to the worldwide, kind of health situation, then, there's flexibility in this as to whether to, go forward with it as contemplated. So I'll go back to you, Vice Mayor Chow, after visiting staff. Jim, I know that you had also some discussions, and staff has had some discussions as to how best to implement this program, and you were looking at templates. That's how I was thinking about, how this would go forward, because I know that there are projects within various parts of the city that just don't get done over time. They're backburnered, and I thought that those would actually be pretty good potential projects for student interns. So Jim, did you have thoughts on this? And as Councilmember Moore is noting, what were your kind of feedback points and staff's idea of going forward with this item?
No, and I did talk to the department heads on this to see, because even with interns, it does take bandwidth away because you have to watch to make sure they're doing. You have a project, follow up on the project. Some of them, for instance, planning said from a college perspective, they would love to have someone who's in the planning area to come in and help with permitting and that type of thing. So that would be a big benefit. From others, I had pretty much good responses from everybody, and I know Council had some wants and desires to have some. So I think it's a doable process. We also looked, I can't tell you the names right now, we looked at a couple other close by cities that have programs, and it wouldn't be difficult to take theirs and merge them to create what might fit us. So we think it's a doable program.
Okay. Well, that all sounds workable. And Vice Mayor Chow, let's go back to you at this time.
So I think the city currently already have paid internship program. It's each department implemented as they have capacity, I guess. But we never really have a good visibility into how this works out. I hope that we even one day get an update on that. And for this particular item, for internship, I wonder, do you really want to limit it only for the summer? Because intern could be during the year too. But I like that it's a project-based that's a limited time. And for a lot of interns are unpaid, but some interns, if we get grant, you can provide them some so-called a stipend. So that it doesn't really cover hourly pay, but a stipend for a certain month with some commitment that they need to commit this number of hours a week during the internship.
Yeah. To answer your questions, I would prefer to focus it on the summer because it's more discreet and we can expand it out from there if the program ends up being successful. With regard to the establishment of a program that's successful enough to attract grant funding, I would also say that once you get it going, I think it's more likely to be able to sustain an application for grants that would come forward for that purpose. But I do know for a fact that there is an appetite out there within our community for students to want to work with the city over the summer. I've actively gotten particularly when I've been mayor, inquiries from students, and yes, specifically high school students, whether there are internship opportunities in City Hall and in the mayor's office, and as a council member intern as well over the course of my time on council. So I would stick with the summer right now. High school I think makes sense. You make a great point with regard to we do have paid interns from college, and I completely agree. We don't really have visibility in how that process works. Maybe it is a bit more ad hoc, and maybe it does make sense to wrap that in as an update if this item does go forward. Council Member Vice Mayor Chow, thanks for those comments. And City Manager Troop, did you want to speak to?
Just real brief. I had texted real quick, and so we do have a quasi program. It's just if there's money in a budget, then we've gone out and we usually look at getting college students that are in that particular program, like an MPA or something that's geared toward city government. So we've been doing it, but on just a few here and there, not any true program yet.
I see. And how do those get noticed? Is that?
I'll have to look to Katie if Katie's still on the.
Okay.
Sure. They get noticed as a normal part-time recruitment.
Okay,
so the
great.
same way we do regular part-timers, yeah.
Okay, so those go through a program and noticing, and members of the public are able to see and apply according to that part-time recruitment process?
Yes.
Okay, great. Any other comments at this point? And Vice Mayor Chow, I did want to ask whether that friendly amendment was accepted with regard to the student internship being focused more on unpaid internships.
So we are striking that whole sentence, right?
Yes.
So that means it could be paid, it could be unpaid, it could be high school, it could be college. There is no limit. We just strike that sentence. I accept that friendly amendment. I do have an amendment to propose.
Well, let me conduct procedural requirements here. So, Councilmember Woolley, do you accept that friendly amendment as a seconder? Yep. Okay, so Councilmember Woolley accepts. My second request for a friendly amendment has to do with Lawrence Mitty description. Can we make it no longer Lawrence Mitty master plan, but just the Lawrence Mitty future park space project?
How about Lawrence Mitty implementation plan?
I like that as well. Implementation plan works. Lawrence Mitty Park implementation plan.
Okay.
Okay. And Councilmember Woolley, you'll accept that as a seconder? Okay, great. So those are my requested amendments to the motion. Vice Mayor, you stated that you had further amendments that you wanted to make, but I do see a hand raised from Councilmember Moore. And Councilmember Way, I'll check in with you. You have no modifications to make. Councilmember Moore, did you have any modifications or comments on the motion on the table?
I just want to clarify for members of the public watching from home. So are we basing this off of attachment B down to a certain number? And which number are you cutting this off on? Because I was kind of curious what the council thought about items which only scored an average of 1. If those are going to be included, because I'd be inclined to cut it off at 1 rather than moving on there. And as I've stated before, I still don't support the city store. I think there's a bandwidth issue for staffing, and then product storage is an issue. The visitor center, as I mentioned before, it's already on the city website. It has a map. This item is a little bit duplicative as well, and I'm really concerned about the staffing bandwidth for having so many items here. So going back to my original question, what reference number are we ending? And just to keep everybody on the same page, are we all looking at attachment B, and which page will it end on? And page and number. Thank you.
Okay, so Councilmember Moore, when you say cutting it off at 1.
Can I explain my motion?
Well, let me clarify Councilmember Moore's comment first in terms of her comment. When you said you would cut off at average of 1, would you include the ones that had the average of 1, or would you require that it be above that?
That it be greater than 1.
Greater than 1?
Right.
Okay, so you're basically saying anything with a sum total rating of 6 or greater, which I noted that actually that stops at item 28, reference number 28, which is the community engagement on alternative transportation and parking. And cross-referencing that to attachment B, it looks like that would be priority number 27. So that would cut off anything after that, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So that's 12 items. It's just to clarify, are you trying to ask for a friendly amendment to the motion, or is that just a comment on some thoughts that you have?
It's just a comment. I'm trying to figure out where the cutoff is on this list, showing concern for the bandwidth of staff. Thank you.
Okay, so Vice Mayor, and I will note that staff has already stated that it believes it could take on what's on there on attachment B. But Vice Mayor, you had a clarification question as to Councilmember Moore's comment.
So my motion does include the entire attachment B. There is no cutoff. So if Councilmember Moore would like to propose a cutoff, that you can propose amendment, I guess.
Okay, thank you very much, Vice Mayor. And I think that I was saying, asking a question to that effect as well. Okay, so we'll reiterate, Councilmember Moore, just to ask the question again, did you want to propose that amendment to cut it off at items that had a total score of 6 or higher? And again, that would be cutting off the last 12 items on on attachment B, which is also what Vice Mayor Chow's motion is based off of. Do you want to formally ask for those last 12 items to be taken off, is the question.
Okay, so the current motion is to include everything on B.
Attachment B, yes,
right,
correct.
Right. And I've made a further request, and that's that the CIP items are removed as well, and that they're dealt with separately, but I don't seem to have any support for removing them, which is fine. My suggestion is to cut it off at 1, but it's to the pleasure of the majority of the council. What other number you think might be more appropriate?
Okay, Vice Mayor, did you have a comment on that?
So my motion also include did I forget to mention that? I have that here. That also direct the staff. I think I forgot to mention that. direct staff to collect rankings of the adopted work program items from the council so that the staff is clear on the priorities when there are unexpected resource challenges. So that means when there are challenges with that new ranking, the staff can choose not to focus on the lower ranked items, whether it's 12 or whatever number. So that I'd like to include that in my. Did I say that in my when I first proposed? I didn't.
No, you did not.
It's in my text, but okay. So then I'll make that amendment. Does that address your concern?
So, Mayor, may I address that amendment?
Yes, City Attorney. Well, no, actually, let's do this because the request from Councilmember Moore is distinct from what Vice Mayor Chow is now suggesting, and so Vice Mayor, instead of going to a different amendment, can you simply state whether you accept the friendly amendment from Councilmember Moore? Because that sounded like a no to me, but
yeah, I don't want to cut it off. I want to keep them on, but then we are clear. We should be clear on what's because the current priority is not what we voted on. The current priority is some of us have voted on things that's not included.
Okay, understood.
So,
now we're squarely within your because you've rejected the friendly amendment from Councilmember Moore. So let's go to Attorney Jensen's suggestion or comment here.
Yeah. So further ranking would either need to take place at this time, or it would have to return to council. We couldn't have. It wouldn't be consistent with the Brown Act to finalize that ranking outside of a notice meeting.
Right.
Oh,
okay,
yeah,
so
of course we will.
Okay.
So the staff will facilitate the ranking, and then it could come. It's just the ranking will, it will come back at the council meeting, so we are clear what's the ranking.
Okay. If council wants this to return and vote on the ranking, then that would be feasible.
Then it's maybe when we adopt the final budget, we can have a ranking. Yeah.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Chow. I'll make a quick comment on this before asking whether your seconder agrees to this. I'm not really in support of this because I think it's too vague as to what a cutoff would be in prioritization. So many unexpected, circumstances.
I'm
could
not
occur.
suggesting cutoff though. I'm just suggesting ranking them. So
you're asking for a re-ranking of these items. I'm just, I just want to say that.
Ranking of the adopted items. Then, in case we have resource conflict, then we
but what
might.
kind of resource conflicts? I mean, is it half? Is it 3/4? Is it a?
No.
Is it an absolute cutoff?
We don't cut off.
I just think it's too vague. Either you re-rank them or you talk about, some other metrics. But I think it's important to re-rank them. For example, the dollar didn't get attention because it wasn't ranked high this year. So some of these items wasn't ranked high because some of us voted high on other items. So
what's
your threshold for being able to prioritize? So let's say one item costs $400,000 and there's $200,000 available, and another item costs $250,000. So how are you supposed to know how to allocate your threshold resources? I mean,
that's the city manager's
this is not
delegation.
I think
the ranking just provides information to staff when this kind of issue comes up.
Then I wouldn't tie it to resource allocations. I would just say let's re-rank them based upon.
Yeah, let's re-rank them.
Yeah.
I
still don't support it, but let me ask your seconder.
I didn't tie it for
okay, that's fine. Your seconder,
Okay.
Councilmember Woolley, would you accept that as a friendly amendment?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Okay, Councilmember Woolley accepts your suggestion to re-rank it. Well, then let me ask you this. When do you suggest that we bring this back to council? Because we sit on the second meeting in May. Our first meeting in June is on June 7th. We have a final budget to approve by the end of June, and this is going to affect some of those resource allocations, speaking of which. And City Manager Troop, did you have a comment?
Yeah, Mayor, if I may. I mean, our goal, just from people being here on the on the dais and staff being around, our goal was to try and finalize the budget by the 7th, so of June 7th. So we do have another meeting to go after that point. I know someone might be, if someone's gone, that might be a problem, but I just wanted to throw that out there that our goal is to have everything done and present by the 7th.
I mean, my goal is to have a finalized motion on this too, and not to extend out the work program for another meeting. So I think that's difficult to support at this time.
Can I show the modified motion? I removed the language on resource that you object to.
Well, I object to re-ranking them at this point. I don't think we should.
So
I think that is
here
just
is
a delay.
It's not delay. So here is direct staff to collect rankings of the adopted work program item from the council, so staff is clear on the priorities, and bring it back to the council when the final budget is approved. So all we need is for Katie to send us a table, and we rank them, and then this table is compiled and posted when we adopt the final budget.
So
There's no extra work.
Are you suggesting that for the 38 items that we're being asked to vote on, that we rank them from 1 to 38?
We can rank from 1 to 5, I guess.
So place priority levels of 1 to 5 on these?
Yeah, similar to what we did, 5, 3, and 1.
Okay, so just to be clear, I'm not sure, are there 38 or are there 43 items on this list? Can anyone, so Katie, is it 38 or 43 or some other number? Because
It
they're
should
not.
be 38 total items, but the reference number goes for.
Okay, so your motion, Vice Mayor Chow, is to have us re-rank every item if this motion passes on a scale of 1 to 5, and apparently we're adopting the same methodology that we used last time to send to Katie, CC our city manager, off a grid by a certain date. That's not communicated to other members of the council, but that's brought in, and are you considering that finalized, or is that for approval?
That's finalized, just like the.
You'll need to turn on your mic.
Be finalized. So we will see a work program item just like the attachment A we see here.
Are there any issues with that, Attorney Jensen, to have that process and then to have it come back on June 7th as part of the materials addending to an item on this?
Yeah, there are no issues if council votes on the final ranking in a noticed meeting.
Okay, so it would still need to be
Brown Act
approved.
perspective.
It would still need to be approved in the notice meeting. We can't pre-approve that.
That's correct.
Right now, okay. Okay, so Vice Mayor Chow, question from Councilmember Woolley.
Could it just come back as a consent item, as long as none of us have an issue with it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Chris? Okay, it could come back as a consent item. Okay, I think we have a procedure identified here. Just to do a vocal clarification on this, Vice Mayor Chow, are you okay with that? Comes
yes.
back as a consent item. All right, so let's identify a date certain to send in our re-rankings. How about the end of next week? Is that workable?
I'd just like to verify, Mayor, no change. I mean, it is what it is. There's no wording changes, no.
Right. Well, we have finalized wording.
Yeah, but I mean,
right.
When it comes back out, we're not reading. It is
Understood. It's
okay.
just ranking. It's going to be on consent, and total additions of items. 1 is the lowest, 5 is the highest. Councilmember Way, you have a hand raised.
My question is, how is that going to stop anybody from putting it out of the consent calendar? We don't put it, audience and a resident can put it, and then we have to discuss it, we have to talk it again, and I'm very wary of this process. I think this is I think it's the 5th time we talk about it, and if Vice Mayor is concerned about the priorities, and I do believe we can approve it today, and then when the staff reports on the quarterly report or monthly report, we can talk about what we prefer to do at that time. That doesn't affect the decisions making, right? When the quarterly report comes back, we can say, how come this is not work on? And is that how?
Yes, of course. There's an opportunity to provide input formally or informally when the quarterly reports are presented.
Right. I know another logistical difficulty here. What's to stop anyone from voting all of them 5 or all of them 1? I mean, there's really no kind of forced ordering here that's being proposed. I mean, virtually anything can happen with regard to the prioritization. They could all end in a tie. So that really isn't that useful to staff either. Vice Mayor Chow, then Councilmember Willie.
Okay. So all I'm asking, we have attachment A here, which is rank the list from our ranking. That's all I'm asking. So when we approve the final budget, we will just have the adopted work program item come back with an attachment that has this ranking. That's all. And we are not approving them. We are just, that will be just one of the attachment of the budget item.
But you're not asking for something that's fully formed in terms of thinking out the process. Because the first times we ranked these, we had a certain number of 5s, a certain number of 3s, and a certain number of 1s. So,
we're not changing that.
So you would suggest 5 5s, 13 3s, and 13 1s, which adds up to 31, but we have 38 items to rank.
That's fine.
Okay.
Sorry, Mayor. No, because we're not getting rid of anything, that was why we were doing it before, was to peel off and remove them.
Right.
Honestly, the best way is 1 to 38. Everyone says, Councilmember Way says number 1, number 5, 2, 8, 9. Then we'll compile those.
Just do a forced ranking 1 through 38.
It is, and then we could take this. I mean, if you all want to adopt it tonight, we can do the ranking another time, but we know from the budget perspective, this going forward, we
Right.
bring the ranking back and we can play that again. But I would suggest 1 to 38, the 5 5s, 3 3s, or whatever. That's to when you want to cut stuff out versus just forced ranking, like you're saying.
So you would suggest a forced ranking, Jim, basically is what you're saying.
Correct.
Yeah, that was my thought on it as well.
That's more complicated when you have to rank items 38 different ways. I think 1, 3, 5, it's easier. I just need to group them into 3 groups. That's easier for ranking. It's just so that we know what's our priority.
I mean,
it doesn't have
so
to.
just, very, very frankly, Vice Mayor Chow, are you simply trying to identify items that will get no points so that you can subsequently argue that they shouldn't be supported? Is that essentially what you're trying to do?
No, we are not. It's adopted, and then it's adopted. I'm not trying to change the adopted program. I'm just trying to have a ranking.
Have some kind of guideline along the way over the course of the year? I mean, I can see why you're trying to, be contemplated as helpful, but I'm not sure if that really adds a whole lot to the process. Okay, so your suggestion at this point, although the motion on the table is to give everyone the ability to rank 1 through 5, your suggestion now is to give everyone 5 5s, 13 3s, and 13 1s. We have a suggestion from the city manager to force a ranking from 1 through 38. What do you want to do? Because we have a motion on the table.
I like the 3 groups, 5, 13, 3, and the rest 1. I don't know how many.
And the rest ones? Okay, so you're saying, your own amendment to your motion on the table is to give everyone 5 5s, 13 3s, and then the remainders would be 1, and if I'm not incorrect, it should be 20 1s, because 5 plus 13 plus 20 is 38. So, Councilmember Willie, are you, as the seconder, amenable to that?
True.
Yes, you are. Okay.
I have a comment.
And what is your comment?
I see the process that we've been doing, 5 5s, 13 3s, 13 1s. It's a total, just a point ranking, and it doesn't have any mysterious things to it. The forced ranking, where we have to now put everything from 1 to 36, what happens if Councilman Way on number 5, she says, I want that to be number 7. You say you want that to be number 3. How does the city manager deal with these inconsistencies versus it's strictly point-based?
Okay, that's fine. I think we're going to end up with a ranking order under this situation. So, Councilmember Moore, you have your hand raised. Do you have a comment at this time before we vote?
Yes, I think that one of the problems that we see is the number of 3s and 1s that we selected ended up causing some problems when you got to the end of the list, and some items that that one individual might have wanted to have ended up with a very low score. And then there was also the confusion of, as I've been mentioning, having the CIP items, which some of them we know are moving forward automatically. We know that the arena item is moving forward automatically. So it became a question of whether or not to put points on items which we already knew are in the works, and I think that kind of muddied up the waters in our scoring. Personally, I would consider having more threes and perhaps reducing the total number. So you could go with 5 5s, 15 threes, and then end at
18 ones.
No, just actually 10 ones, and have some cutoff of the list.
So just basically have some that are unranked in your list.
Yeah, and to remove some.
I'm totally agnostic to it. I mean, if it actually garners your support, well, let me just ask the hypothetical. You don't have to be bound to it. But if we accepted this, would this motion garner your support?
To have another ranking?
To have the ranking as you described it.
To do it that way? Yes, I still want the CIP items removed. So one way I can deal with that personally is to give them zeros. Because I don't think they belong on the list, that we're going to be ranking them separately as the CIP.
I think that's fair. So, okay, I can, let me revisit this with Vice Mayor Chow and the seconder. Vice Mayor, would you be willing to modify the ranking system to 5 5s, 15 3s, and remind me again, Councilmember Moore, how many ones? 10 ones? Okay. Would you be willing to modify the ranking system accordingly in order to garner the support? I think it's advisable, frankly. I mean, unanimity is good.
So right now, changing from 5 5s, 13 3s, the rest one to 15 threes. So we are just changing to.
Right.
I don't think it makes sense, but it's okay. Yeah.
Okay, 5 5s. Okay, 15 3s and 10 ones.
Yeah.
Councilmember Willie, would you be willing to accept that
Yes.
as a seconder? All right. Any other further comments? I'm not seeing any. Yes, Councilmember Willie.
Oh.
So for the seismic upgrade, I would tend to think that we should put parentheses around the description and say, see the CIP for the true definition. Having a definition in the work plan and a definition in the CIP, which we're going to spend I feel we're going to all spend a lot of time defining on how the seismic upgrade process should work in the CIP. So by keeping it here means we're going to get the quarterly update and be able to give feedback. If the thing came to us, the 3-story garage is now a 2-story garage, and we don't agree with it, we get quarterly update to them. No above ground parking, whatever the case may be, where without that, we don't see what's being done with the CIP.
Okay, let me just summarize here, Councilmember Willie. So you'd like an amendment to the motion to clarify that there's a connection between the description here in the work plan to the capital improvement program description. Councilmember Moore, you have a comment on this before I ask Vice Mayor Chow as the movement whether she would accept that as a friendly amendment.
Okay. The issue is with regards to the homeless shelter. That item should have it pulled out as a separate CIP, and if it's going to be in the CIP budget, it needs to, according to our policy from our CIP budget, there's information that needs to be provided that hasn't been provided for it. So I'm having some problems with that particular item, because if you're trying to make a connection to it in the CIP, it doesn't show up.
Okay, so Councilmember Willie was talking about a different item. Now you're adding a different item with regard to the CIP.
That we have Mayor Paul, we have an error. This item is actually a CIP item in my belief. That if you're going to have a specific plan for a facility for the unhoused, that to me is a CIP item, and it needs a whole lot of discussion, and it should be in the CIP budget with dollar amounts and funding and more information.
Okay, given the fact that that's not pertinent to Councilmember Willie's comment, I'm going to go ahead and ask Councilmember Willie with regard to that comment on the seismic retrofits of City Hall. Would you be willing to add to this item, to your suggested amendment, that we form a subcommittee on this topic with regard to the seismic retrofits of City Hall?
Yes, I would very much like a subcommittee on the seismic retrofits. Thank you for that suggestion.
Okay, so this is what I'm going to do at this point. I'm going to go ahead and address Councilmember Moore's query with regard to the homeless unhoused item and CIPs subsequent to this. But let me ask Vice Mayor Chow, will you accept Councilmember Willie's friendly amendment to your motion?
Which is
with regard to the seismic retrofits of City Hall, that work plan item, that it be tied to the capital improvement program's description, and that a subcommittee of council be formed under this item to work with the city manager as well as the public works director on the item and provide updates to council.
okay. So here is what I'm proposing. So, sorry,
Vice Mayor Chow, I'm asking you whether you accept Councilmember Willie's proposed amendment to your motion.
Not exactly.
I'm not asking for. Okay, so that's down.
No, wait. I'd like to accept a modified version. So here on the screen, this is my original motion. I'd like to request that each item that also appear in the CIP plan be marked as such on the work program that we adopted, then it's clear, because it's not only that one item. Many items also appear under CIP. And also, I would also add form a subcommittee for the seismic retrofit of City Hall.
Councilmember Willie, is that acceptable to you as a seconder of the motion?
Sure. Yes.
Okay.
And my other amendment I haven't motioned that has
no,
to do
Vice
with
Mayor
the
Chow, no, procedurally,
unhoused.
I'm sorry.
Said I have one more amendment I haven't mentioned that has to do with the homeless shelter issue that Councilmember Moore mentioned.
Well, Councilmember Moore is in front of you in line on this one, and so I'm going to go to Councilmember Moore. Councilmember Way had her hand raised, and then we'll go back to you, Vice Mayor Chow. Councilmember Moore.
I've lowered my hand.
You've lowered your hand. Councilmember Way, did you want to speak on?
Yes, I would like to ask a clarification question on the staff on why is the homeless shelter program a CIP? I don't see a scope of the program yet. I believe I think I'll let the staff answer it, but in my mind, it is a initial investigation, so to see how that's going to come out. There's not going to be a budget. I don't see how it's a CIP program, so can the staff answer it?
I think that might be directed to any of three people, and all three are present and available, even four, actually. Let's start with our city manager, and I'll note that city attorney is here, the director of public works has a camera on, and your deputy city manager also has a camera on.
Thank you, Mayor. I did see people pop. I was going to go ahead and, since Matt popped up, I'll let him go ahead and speak about it then.
It's very typical as a project is in its concept stages for it to be listed within the CIP, but not to be fully fleshed out and not to have the later phases of the project identified. We don't know, based on the work program as it's stated today, whether this is a public facility, a private facility, a partner facility. All of that is stuff that would be worked out through the initial stages of the evaluation or the assessment or the work on the program. In my mind, very similar to other projects that develop over time and start with a scoping or a master planning process where you don't know the long-term construction costs or needs because you don't have the scope of the project yet.
Okay, acceptable answer. Councilmember White, did you have any other follow-ups at this time?
No, I think
works?
that answered my question.
All right. Do we have anything further? We do have the motion on the table, and Vice Mayor Chow, I think you stated that you had an additional amendment as relates to the unhoused item.
Yeah.
Not the homeless jobs program, but the other.
Item. I agree that this item right now is a conceptual plan, so it's whether or not there will be CIP project coming out of that is unsure yet. but then I do want to modify some of the language so that it does fall within our jurisdiction, that we are not overstepping our bound as what a city of Cupertino can do. So this is edit that I proposed for the item. Underscored are the addition to the item. The rest is the same as the original item. So
we can read the material that's on here. It seems that you are trying to emphasize that this is within the county jurisdiction. And so if that's stipulated, I will go ahead and, as the person that wrote this, endorse your changes. That's fine. I always intended for us to have a partnership with the county on this topic, and I agree with your point. And so if that's your amendment and you have no further comment, I'll ask your seconder whether he would support this as the amendment.
Yes.
Okay, so that's the motion on the table now. Are there any further comments before we conduct a vote? And Councilmember Moore, you have your hand raised.
Yes. Vice Mayor, would you please put your motion back up? I want to make sure that the paragraph regarding the facilities development, that the word to might change.
Yeah. Facility development, what do you mean?
Yeah, under the item for a facility for the unhoused. You need to scroll down.
The unhoused is here.
Where's
this is the whole thing.
Right. Work with the county and relevant agencies to facility development. I think perhaps for would make more sense. For facility development.
There's a
like
verb
that.
missing now. Okay, for promoting or for
something. Yeah.
Yeah. Chris, come on, you trading words. Add a verb.
How about we change that to promote facility development?
To promote facility development with supportive services. Okay. Acceptable seconder, Councilmember Willie?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Councilmember Moore. And so, no further hands raised. Please vote with your lights on this motion.
Do you want a review of all the changes?
I think staff will be able to track when we provide the minutes. And if you have objections to it, just speak then.
Okay.
Motion carries unanimously as amended.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's take a 5-minute break. With a time check, we're a little bit before 9:45, so let's go ahead and reconvene. I'm sorry, 8:45. So let's reconvene at 8:47. With regard to the time, I think we'll probably be able to allocate a little over an hour and a half for each of our remaining items. Thanks.